Amy Carney.
Zach Lindsay.
Karen Warner.
Meeting, but the base level again was put at $4,914 per student. That was an increase of 2.9% from this current year that we're about to end. So that had provided additional funds from what we originally anticipated. Teacher experience index changed ever so slightly from what we thought it was going to be and from the prior year. And oddly, the smallest little changes there make a big difference. We have the estimated $5.5 million in one-time money. That is one-time money that was provided to us for next year and will not be in future budgets unless something changes. So we'll need to look at what that looks like, but also keep in mind that putting that towards salary would not be the best idea. Because it is one-time money. This is the 8th year of Prop 123, which was additional monies that were given to school districts several years back having to do with a lawsuit on school funding. This does provide an additional $1.3 million to the district, and it expires June 30th of 2025. So we have a little bit more time there with that money, but it does expire soon. Classroom site fund increased from $708 per weighted student to $758 per weighted student. So that provides additional funds that will be used for performance pay, but we've also this year included additional pay to teachers to increase the salary for teachers using some of those funds. This is the first year. Next year will be the first year of our new additional assistance override, which was passed in November, increasing that from $8 million to up to 14.5. We're not quite there. I think with it's 10% of the RCL, so that put us about about 14.2 million for capital override. That expires on June 30th of 2029, so we have that for several years. The budget also provided raises to all employees, and for about the fifth or sixth year in a row, there is no increase to employees for benefits. That's something that we'll have to address moving forward because insurance has certainly gone up in price. However, we have not passed those increases to our employees, and that is the case for next year as well. Just looking at what that budget encompasses, the entire budget for the district is $458 million, $458.5 million. Most of that comes through M&O. The second portion, largest portion being other funds, which are really going to be your cash accounts, those types of of funds. But it includes capital, classroom site, federal grants, state grants, instructional improvement, bond, adjacent ways, and debt service. So you can see from there kind of how the entire budget is allocated out within the different funds. This one kind of looks at it in function and shows what would be just from M&O, what is in classroom. So that is direct classroom. That's going to be a teacher or a para who is directly in the classroom. Student support is going to be like your library aids, media, that type of thing. Instructional support, again, supporting the classroom. So those three together, classroom support, instructional support, and student support, are all lumped into what we call instructional, or what the AG calls instructional support. We're at 70%. That is just for M&O. When the AG looks at how we're spending our classroom dollars and does that analysis, it encompasses more than just M&O, but this shows within the M&O dollars where we have things budgeted. I did break out on those AG reports. Administration is just administration. For here, I broke it out so you could see how much was general administration and how much is school administration. So school is going to be like principals, assistant principals, and the office staff that are associated with them, whereas general administration would be like finance, payroll, human resources, communications, governing board, superintendent, all of those areas. Then plant operations and transportation. Just looking at our tax rate for fiscal year 23-24, this is, of course, an estimate. We don't actually set the tax rate. We look at what we estimate it's going to be. That's actually set by the county. But looking at what our assessment value is and what would needed to be levied to be able to make the budget what it should be, this is the estimate that we have for our tax rate. It does go up for next year. That is primarily because we did an override, and part of that override estimated 8 cents additional if we went to the 14.5 million, which we're pretty close to, which is why you see that go up ever so slightly. Additionally, last year and this year, the state has funded schools better than it had in the past, increasing what they had originally anticipated or required to do. As a result of that, that also increases that tax rate some, but still considerably lower than most of our other districts. And then this last slide does just look at where we compare with our peer districts. As you can see, even with the primary and secondary, primary being what's required through state funding, the state M&O, the state capital allocation, secondary being overrides and bonds. You can see that it is still considerably less than our peer districts. With that, I will take any questions.
Do any of the governing board members have questions for Ms. Crozier at this time on this topic? Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Thank you, Ms. Crozier. So my main question is, what is our strategy in this budget for focusing on elevating academic achievement for our students? I mean, our taxpayers deserve to know what we're going to do differently to get better results than what we've been seeing. Our scores show that there's a lot of work to be done, and we cannot continue to just say we provide a world-class education and not put money toward actually giving our students that. So in all transparency, I'm concerned about the funds that we've been wasting. I mean, we've got budgeted $405,000 on for this M&O override special election for November. Our marketing and communications department salaries have doubled. We're losing staff who work directly with our students and who have told us that they're leaving due to their unrealistic job expectations for what they're being paid. And we're giving stipends to our highest paid administrators and continually bringing in consultants and programs without any data that proves that it's working to strengthen our students' academic achievement.
Ms. Carney, can you please let Ms. Crozier answer your question?
Yep, so I've got, yes, if you want to start with that, that'd be great. I've got two specifics after.
Great questions, Ms. Carney. So a couple things that we've changed this year. There's still work to be done. Actually, about 3 things that we've changed. One, we put an additional stipend for all classroom teachers, which was huge. I mean, if you've been with the district for, I think it's 15 plus years, it's over $4,000 stipend or additional pay going to teachers. So one of the things we focused on this year through IBN, and really how do we get there, is getting starting pay up to $50,000 for teachers. But additionally, taking those money from the classroom site fund that we do have, and how do we get that into the hands of our teachers, of the people who are in the classroom working with students. So the first step was by identifying what additional funds could we get to those staff members. So we've done that. That's in here. The second thing we did is we said we're not going to just keep rolling over budgets. Now, are we completely where we need to be? No, there's still work that we need to look at. What is really the value on some of the things that we're doing? But the first step was to say, what are we doing? How are we budgeting? So instead of just rolling budgets over, we went to, we did the capital planning committee and said, what do you need to purchase? What are the items that are needed in the classroom? That helps us to get a better understanding of exactly what is being bought as well. So when we have a record, a log of everything that's being purchased, we can go back and say, okay, are these reading softwares that we're buying, are they giving us the return that we need? Are they helping our students, or do we need to look at other curriculum that we're using, other software that's being used? So that's the first step, is that capital planning, to be able to look at what are we purchasing with our capital dollars and how do we utilize them better. The second part was within our M&O budget. We went back to the departments and said, we're not just going to roll the dollars over. You have to tell us what it is that you are using those funds for. There are things outside of the classroom that have gone up. Salaries have gone up. When we gave, in the middle of the year last year, after school started, a $2 an hour increase to all classified employees. That's a huge increase. That impacts the classroom, but it also impacts the departments outside of the classroom. So when you're looking at departments that have classified staff in them, those salaries are going to go up quite a bit when you do, and that needed to happen. We needed to be able to do that to be competitive with our, even our industries that aren't school-based, that food services or retail. So we looked at those things. I think there's still more to be done. We have been looking, I know that Dr. Benson and the curriculum team have been looking at our tests, our scores improving by using some of the software that we're using, be it Varsity Tutors, be it, I know we've done the Prisms, we've done a lot of additional tutoring, we've brought in other groups to look at how we address learning loss. And so I think those are things that are continually being looked at. So I think we're making progress. Are we there fully yet? There's still to be done, but that has, I think, been addressed more so than it has in the past within this budget.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Couple specific questions. So what is our plan then for the carry forward of 14 million? We still have 14 million in carry forward, I saw, and that's double really what we should have in there. So what's our plan to put that toward student academics?
Great question. So the budget does have a $14 million carry forward. We've been bringing that down. One of the questions that's come up is, what is the appropriate amount of carry forward? Part of that has to do with we don't fill all positions. Part of that has to do is we budget for some things and they do come in less expensive than what we originally anticipated. It is appropriate to have somewhat of a balanced carry forward. And when you consider how much our entire budget is, the 14% or the 14 million, while sounds like a large number, is really a smaller percentage of our actual M&O budget or our budget overall. As we bring that down, one of the effects of that is that then the following year we have less money than to budget, because as we bring that down, our total budget goes down each year. So it's really one-time monies. If we put all of that into salaries, then we would get into a case where the following year we'd have to cut positions or salaries to be able to sustain what we promised, because it really is that carry forward really is one-time money from not spending it. So we have really looked at what is the appropriate amount to have in there. I think 14 is really the number we probably want to be at, because it's roughly 5-6%, which is not very much when you're talking about your essentially savings.
Okay, and then policy DBR states how much, in that policy does it state that we should keep in that carry forward?
Oh gosh, off the top of my head, I want to say it was like within the 4% to 9% range, but I don't know without looking at it again.
Okay.
We're in that range.
Okay. Thank you, yeah. So I think if we can look into using some of that excess money for programming that is going to help our students' academic achievement, I would love to see that. And then lastly for me, I have a question on, I noticed that we're budgeting $653,000 for purchased services, which is over 3 times the amount we were spending in this category in 2018. I just want to know, I can't tell what types of things are paid for under the purchase services category.
Another great question. Purchase services is going to be when you contract out. So if we can't fill a position, say like a SPED teacher or a SPED para, we have to contract that out because we still have to be able to provide that service. Same thing for transportation. When we're contracting out services to transport students, that becomes purchase services. So as that number goes up, really the driver of that is because we're having to contract out, and it is so much more expensive to contract than if we could actually hire in-house and do it through a salary.
Okay, so all of that money is contracting out for salaries?
Not necessarily all of it, but as you see an increase, the big driver of that is because we're having to contract out services.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Board Member Warner.
Yeah.
I'm going to add on to what Board Member Carney said as well. We have some other expenditures that you brought up, prison, varsity tutors. We had WIN for staff, and then also a coach from Michigan to the tune of almost $10,000. We paid a lobbyist $3,000 a month. And we haven't seen our test scores go up using prison or varsity tutors at this point. Varsity tutors is on the agenda later, so I'll discuss that then. Any person on this dais can pick up the phone and call any legislator or senator, and they will take our call. It's completely unnecessary that we're spending money on a lobbyist. I don't think we need to be flying in coaches from Michigan. We have very capable staff here who can coach our principals, and we could also find local coaching companies here in Arizona. So it's, we really just have to take a look at how we're spending funds and make sure that we're being good stewards of our taxpayers' funds. Thank you.
Yeah.
To clarify, the coach position that Board Member Werner mentioned is not an athletic coach. It is a support systems coach for personnel. Are there any other questions at this time? Board Member Carney.
Okay, there it is. Thank you, President Sanowski. Could I just ask that you take a roll call vote for this? Thank you.
That is required. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Crozier on this topic? Is there anyone here present this evening from the general public that has questions on this particular issue for the expenditure budget for the 23-24 school year? This would be the time for you to approach the podium and share your concerns or questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead. Please state your name when you get to the microphone.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. John Castiglia, and I'm concerned about the budget in that the presentation was very good from the number point of view, but I did not see anything specifically of how these programs will increase the test scores. There has to be a presentation on what you're going to buy and what it's supposed to do, and then how we're going to follow up on it. I don't see any of that in the budget. That's my comment.
Dr. Castiglia, I appreciate your commentary, and I just would like the public to know that when we have action items or proposals to support or deny as a governing board, collectively as a governing board, we do have those detailed opportunities for individuals in our community to learn more, not just from the presentations, but also on our website. Okay, great question. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions from the public? Go ahead. Again, please state your first and last name and then go ahead and ask your questions.
Yeah, my name's Yvonne Cahill. I'm a taxpayer in Scottsdale. I didn't see any specifics in the M&O budget on SROs, and I was just wondering if they're included in there.
That is, as personnel, SROs or security resource officers are part of our personnel expenditures.
And how many are budgeted
Shannon, go
for?
ahead.
Hi, yes, so within the M&O budget, there is a budget in there for SRO officers that are at the middle school and high schools for both Scottsdale PD and Phoenix PD, as well as the salaries for our staff members that are security officers.
So you have 9 now in Scottsdale Unified School District, and ideally you should probably be at 15 to 20. So my question was, how many in the budget are you budgeted for?
I'd have to look up the exact number unless Josh knows off the top of his head how many security officers.
Or SROs or
SROs?
security officers?
And
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, my name is Josh Friedman, I'm Director of Security, and we currently have no new school resource officers budgeted for next year. We have 5 at our high schools and I believe 4 or 5 at our middle schools.
Thank you.
And how many security or security officers or personnel do we have, Josh?
We currently have spots for 31, I believe. I could be off by a few on that, and they are also at our middle schools and high schools, and we currently have 4 vacancies we're interviewing for.
4 vacancies that we're looking to fill.
Correct, that we're interviewing currently.
Okay, thank you.
So the total number would be what? So if you're looking at, you should have 15 to 20 plus a security guard for every school, where are you in the numbers compared to where you should be ideally?
The ideal numbers are
He has shared what's been budgeted, ma'am.
Okay, so
Is it the total about 40, doing the simple math? Does that sound about right? Between SROs and security, Mr. Friedman?
about 40, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions that you'd like to have answered at this time on the budget proposal for the 23-24 school year? Okay, seeing that there are none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the adoption of and proposal of fiscal year 2023-2024 expenditure budget. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Seconded by Board Member Lindsay. We will take a roll call vote for this. Board Member Carney?
Sorry, the light isn't working very well. Thank you, President Sanowski. So I'm going to approve this budget with the notion that we will be reallocating resources towards strengthening our students' academic achievement and further funding our classrooms.
Board Member Carney's vote is a yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yes.
Board Member Lindsay?
Yes.
Board Member Lindsay's vote is a yes. Board Member Werner?
Yes.
Board Member Werner's vote is a yes, and my vote is a yes as well. That motion passes 4-0. This time, I'd like to make it a motion to leave this public hearing, to adjourn the public hearing. And is there a second to that? Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Carney. All in favor to adjourn the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 4-0. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Number 48 Governing Board. Today is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023, and the time is 5:25 p.m. Board Member Werner, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Vice President Werner. I'd like to start with a roll call for our regular governing board meeting, starting from my far right, please.
Amy Carney,
Zach Lindsay.
Karen Warner.
And I'm Julie Sinowski. 4 of our 5 governing board members are present this evening, and we do have a quorum. I'm going to read to all of you that are present, and, yes, sorry. Thank you, Dr. Menzel. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second to that? So you would like to amend the agenda?
I would like to amend the agenda.
Okay,
I'd
go
like to-
ahead.
I'd like to pull 10K and 10R off of
Just a
the,
second. 10K
and 10R.
and 10R. So reclassification and job posting for risk management position, Ms. Werner?
Yes?
And then approve the renewal of varsity tutors for fiscal year 23-24. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep, you're welcome. Board Member Carney?
thank you, President Sinowski. I'd also like to pull off 2 items off consent agenda for discussion, and that is item 10F, performance-based pay for specified administrators. And I'd also like to pull item 10Q, the TIPS contract for the purchase of a card ID system district-wide. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other amendments to this agenda? Seeing that there are none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Lindsay. All in favor to approve the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 4-0. Okay, this time I'm going to read our statement of decorum, and I appreciate those of you who continually follow our expectations in our business meeting. Citizens attending and/or participating in the Scottsdale Unified School District meetings, either in person, virtually, or telephonically, are required to observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to members of the governing board and our staff. Unauthorized remarks or demonstrations from members of the audience, yells, outbursts, and/or other disruptions are not permitted. Members of the public are not allowed to approach the dais at any time while the governing board meeting is in session without express permission of the governing board president. Okay, at this time, we are going to start with item 6 on our agenda, which is our governing board reports. Any governing board members like to share their reports now? Seeing that there are none, I would like to just real briefly share that I have the honor to recognize the following gifts with great appreciation from our Hopi PTA, Arcadia High School, Desert Mountain High School, Kiva, Laguna, Pueblo PTOs, Cherokee, Cochise, Hohokam, and Sequoia APTs, SHAPS Organization, Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust, the Arizona Community Foundation, the Charos Foundation, Walmart Matching, French Toast Matching, Black Bond Matching, Wesley Bloom, and Robert Van Sickle. Thank you to all of those who I mentioned for their ongoing generosity of gifts to our SUSD. Many of our programs would not be able to take place for our students without the contribution of treasures of time and talent and resources. So I do appreciate that, and I try to share that out in each meeting because I think sometimes we forget to show those appreciations. I did enjoy that profound privilege of observing and being part of our Desert Mountain High School graduation ceremony at the end of the school year. We haven't really had one of these meetings since then. It was great to see so many families engaged and excited about the success of their children and moving on from our Scottsdale Unified School District. I will note that our board did meet in executive session. Feels like a month ago, but it wasn't that long ago, to evaluate and determine the contracted performance pay criterion for Dr. Menzel. And although the specific details of the executive session cannot be shared, and contrary to some inaccuracies published locally, the results were determined through objective measurements, the results for Dr. Menzel's pay for performance amount. And that was something that was stipulated in Dr. Menzel's board-approved contract and included calculations with some pretty simple math to determine the amount that he was, that he had earned. I do recognize that many of our employees are continuing to diligently work, although their work looks different right now this time of the year, because they are hiring and planning and preparing for the 2023-24 school year. I hope all of our employees do have a chance for some much-needed self-care and R&R, and I will note that I'm looking forward to a bit of respite from district governance, and aside from participating in a national conference, I will plan to spend some time with my family and a little R&R. So seeing that there are no other, anyone else wanting to share their board reports at this time, we will move on to public comment. And I shared the decorum for everybody, so when your name is called, please come up to the podium, state your first and last name. Please don't move that round disc that's in front of the microphone. That's actually a filter. That's not the microphone itself. So if it needs to be adjusted, you can ask someone for support to do that, or might I ask that you just remove or lower the, or raise the back part, but that front part is not the microphone itself. Open meeting law permits individual board members to do as follows at the conclusion of the call to public. Ask the superintendent or staff to review a matter, to investigate any unfounded practices, correct any misinformation, or ask counsel or superintendent to address it, and include it for the record section of our website, telecommunications. Ask the matter be put on a future agenda. And I have 5 requests before me, people who have requested to speak before the beginning of our meeting. Up first is Laura Wiesoff, followed by Emmy Cardella. Also, when you get to the podium, after you state your first and last name, if you could please tell us your association with the district, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm Laura Wiesoff, and I'm a parent of elementary school students. Governing board, on June 6th, the SUSD board voted 3-2 to approve supplemental material, including content for K-2 students. On June 8th, 2 of our board members joined the Arizona Department of Education press conference to speak in opposition of the vote due to the optional material on Pebble Go, from which parents can opt out. It was mentioned that it's inappropriate for students to have the opportunity to learn about the diversity of our families and their cultural differences, as well as issues with political protests. We live in a global society. SUSD is following state standards and preparing our students for the future. Our elementary academic programs include Mandarin and Spanish immersion and the International Baccalaureate program to allow our students to learn about other cultures and languages and to be successful in our global community. If our students aren't encouraged to learn about each other's cultures and families, how will they relate to each other? How will our students of different backgrounds feel safe and accepted at school if they don't feel comfortable sharing about their lives? How will these students be able to learn if they do not feel accepted and have to hide who they are? Our students' backgrounds shape how they learn, and when our students feel valued and a sense of belonging, they perform better academically. Likewise, when our new board members ignore socioeconomic disparities, that they say things like, let's have the teachers from our highest performing school help teachers from our lower performing schools, without acknowledging that family income is directly correlated to standardized testing outcomes. That's why it was so important to note that last year, over half of SUSD neighborhood elementary schools outperformed Great Hearts Scottsdale schools, even though our schools serve higher special needs and lower income populations. That is what should be looked at. Our teachers and administrators in our Title I schools are known for being some of our very best. As our board president said, thank you for agreeing that being kind is not marginalizing our students and our families, and I would add our teachers. Thank you.
Emmy Cardella, followed by Jeff Rattay.
Good evening, Governing Board, Dr. Menzel, Ms. Wagner. My name is Emmy Cordella, and I'm an SUSD parent. I'm speaking tonight to address Board Member Carney and Board Member Warner for your continued violations of Governing Board Policy BBAA, titled Board Member Authority and Responsibilities. The policy states that the duties and obligations of an individual board member include the following, and then includes the item to accept the will of the majority of vote in all cases and not to actively undermine decisions. Board Member Carney and Board Member Warner, you have consistently violated this policy. The example I will speak to tonight is the press conference with Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horn on June 8th, 2 days after this governing board approved renewal of a contract with Capstone Press. At the press conference, you each introduced yourselves as elected members of Scottsdale Unified Governing Board, then reread your comments from the June 6th meeting about your objection to the renewal of the contract, as well as voicing your objection to the outcome of the vote. This is directly contrary to your duty to accept the will of the majority vote in all cases and not to actively undermine decisions. This did not go unnoticed by the press, with one reporter responding to you, Board Member Carney. The nature of majority is that majority rules. You seem to be trying to undermine that with Mr. Horn. I expect that your retort would be that you have a First Amendment right to express your beliefs. This issue is not about freedom of speech. It is about board policy, which you took an oath to abide by. Board Member Carney and Board Member Warner, if you do not like policy BBAA, please bring it before the board for modification. In the meantime, take your duties seriously and abide by the policies which you swore to uphold.
Jeff Rattay, followed by Yvonne Cahill.
As I mentioned at the last school board meeting, I was a paid coach for the past 7 years in the district. I have an email from Dr. Menzel that states coaching decisions are made by building principals. The Kokopaw principal convinced me to return as the 7th grade flag football coach. My brother was also again hired as the 8th grade coach. Let me describe the first day of practice last January. I pull into the parking lot. The kids had formed facing lines from the gate to the field. As I passed through, they bowed. Then the entire group of 8th grade kids who I'd coached the previous year sprinted across the field and started hugging me and welcoming me back. 2 days later, Dr. Menzel's office notified the principal that I would be a volunteer coach, not a paid one. Why would he want to put the screws to a bunch of 6th and 7th graders and their families? If I walked, their entire season would be canceled. I hand-carried a letter to his office and sent emails. No response. At the last school board meeting, the board president told Dr. Menzel to tell me why. Julie sent me an email. Dr. Menzel will respond to you promptly. It's been 5 months with no communication from Dr. Menzel. The board's personnel policies and procedures manual spells out the duties and responsibilities of every paid coaching position in the district. One is listed for 7th grade flag football. I fulfilled all of them. I was the only coach for that team and never missed a practice or game. I remain the only head coach in the history of the Scottsdale schools to have not been paid. I understand the board member's dilemma. You authorized payment of my coaching stipend, valued at nearly $2,000, to be given to a close personal friend of a board member. She never coached one day. There is no paid position in the Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual for Sports Observer. Most of the parents of the team would not even recognize that person. This scheme by Dr. Menzel is a misuse of public funds. I have been doing volunteer veteran presentations for the past 13 years in Arizona schools for the Joe Foss Institute. I have not done a single one in the Scottsdale schools this past year.
Yes, I'd like to ask if I could yield my time to Jerry Herod, because he got here right at 5 and they wouldn't let him sign in.
No.
Okay. So tonight I want to talk about SROs, and I want to make note that every time I come to one of the school board meetings, you guys have Scottsdale police officers here protecting you. So you seem to put an emphasis on your safety and not the safety of the children. Our community wants and has asked for dollars to be spent on school security resource officers for our elementary schools, and right now our youngest students and elementary school staff are not protected. It is not okay to pass bonuses and stipend to top administrators while leaving our youngest students vulnerable to, God forbid, an attack on their safety at the school. Use the money you've been given wisely. As taxpayers, you expect us to support the override coming in November, but no one is listening or interested into what taxpayers have to say or want in our schools. I will not support the override, and I will work against it. M&O dollars must go to school security in our elementary schools if you want the community to continue to agree to fund overrides. I drove by a school probably 4 months ago down in Phoenix, and there was an SRO officer outside, and it really made an impact on me. I was thought about how it would feel if you were somebody that was not, had good intentions in your heart, to see him outside. I'm sure you would go to the next school. So I'm just asking for you to put the children first instead of yourselves. We need another 15 to 20 SROs and also in addition security guards in the schools. So thank you so much for your time, and please think about this because it'll be on you, the blood would be on your hands.
Mike Bengert?
Yes, can I yield my time to Susan? Okay. All right, my name is Mike Bengert. I'm a grandparent of 2 grandchildren attending Cheyenne. At the last board meeting, Dr. Menzel was awarded a $21,348 performance bonus. Let's look at the performance. The bonus included $8,000 tied to 4 academic goals. Menzel was paid for not meeting 2 out of 4, partially meeting 1, and meeting 1 other goal. According to the preliminary AASA testing data, 65% of 3rd graders are proficient in ELA, but by 6th grade, only 54%. In math, 70% of 3rd graders were proficient, but by 8th grade, only 47%. Great job for a district whose vision is world-class, future-focused learning. Menzel says SUSD did better than the overall state averages. So as bad as the state numbers are, SUSD is not as bad. I really don't care about the rest of the state. I care about SUSD. Over $13,000 of the bonus was for non-academic performance, things like getting the staff to show up for work, auditing the HR department, keeping daily attendance from dropping even further. Menzel gets a bonus for getting people to come to work. Let's look at how Menzel is doing meeting the SUSD values. Inclusion, only 54% of the students feel welcome, 48% feel like they belong, 38% are proud to attend, and only 27% like school. Perhaps trying to appease a small minority of students and teaching students they can change their gender is in fact alienating to most of the students. Trust, Menzel isn't doing very well with this value either. Less than 40% of the community thinks the district engages with the community effectively, communicates, responds to community members' questions or concerns, and is transparent with the community. Board members who voted for the bonus said they had no choice. It's in the contract. Yet when it comes to following the law, they seem to have no problem approving inappropriate sexual materials, teachers telling 2nd graders they can change their gender, and then attacking parents who complain, or hiding information about students from parents, and Menzel withholding information from board members, all of which violate the law. Which Menzel performance is the board rewarding? You should resign so we can get a board.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment section for this evening. Do any governing board members, would anyone like to respond according to what I said before public comment started? Board Member Carney?
Thank you, President Sanowski. Where in policy does it say that people cannot give their time to another speaker if they ask?
Ms. McLennan's there, our legal counsel's there to support.
Madam President, Ms. Carney, so the district can establish time, place, and manner restrictions with respect to public comment. You all have established a process for the putting in of names and a timeline by when people have to do that. And so because those comments don't fit within those time, place, and manner restrictions, someone can't garner their time to another individual. Thank you.
Okay, and then Dr. Menzel, if I could respond to Coach Jeff Rattay, if we could please get a report on who was paid for coaching that team, if that is true. We need a report to the board on this situation, who was paid, and why was he not. We need to understand so he doesn't have to keep speaking to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Carney. Any other commentary requests from governing board members? Okay, then I would like to add, thank you for bringing up the issue with Mr. Rattay. For correction, I would like to add that I did not reach out to him after the last governing board meeting. I did respond to a message because he continues to send messages. And I would like for our legal counsel to continue to share with Mr. Rattay what the situation was, that he was not issued a contract, that he was a volunteer, and we don't pay volunteers in our district. If you could provide that for him again, and then also include all of the governing board members in that communication so they can see what we are legally held to in supporting our volunteers. Thank you, Ms. McLennan.
Thank you.
And then I would actually like to direct Superintendent Menzel to investigate the boards, two of the board members who were listed this evening and their violation of governing board policy BBAA, as has been historically supported by this school district. We do like to hold our governing board members to the same level of expectation of following our policies as our employees. And so please, Dr. Menzel, please look into that violation. Okay. And then I'd like to respond to Ms. Cahill's requests. Just a correction here, our security is not here for our interests. We do not have security detail to protect governing board members. We have security at our governing board members to protect our public, and which often includes our students and our families in our community, and that's why they are here. Just kind of for the record. All right, Dr. Hartwell, hello. We are going to move on to superintendent's comments. Dr. Menzel.
Good evening, President Sanowski, Vice President Werner, and members of the governing board. Just a few quick updates this evening, given the agenda that we have in front of us. The first thing I would like to do is celebrate our communications department. Several months ago, we noted that they had received Arizona School Public Relation Association awards, and we've recently learned that our department is the recipient of 4 different National School Public Relation Association awards. One of them is a 2023 Golden Achievement winner for the Dig It campaign. For those who may not remember, that is our school security campaign regarding our doors, our IDs, our gates, and information technology. And there are a lot of people who are part of putting that campaign together, and it did receive national recognition as a Golden Achievement winner. We also have 3 other additional awards related to publications and digital media excellence. One of those relates to the SUSD Source, our monthly online publication highlighting the many good things happening across all of SUSD. The social media campaign, #LegacyOfSuccess, and our strategic plan. So I just want to give a shout out to Christine Harrington and her team for all of the work that they did and the national recognition that they're receiving. Secondly, I would like to just build on what was noted at our last meeting related to Cognia accreditation. Today in our inbox, we received the final report. On June 28th, the Cognia board will officially accept that report, and then our accreditation will be final. But as was noted at that last meeting, we scored in the top tier of the 3 different categories that Cognia has for accreditation. I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Benson and all of the team members that have worked to put together that compelling report. It reflects consistent effort and focus on student success here in Scottsdale, And as you know, and we've talked many times, we have many opportunities for improvement, but we also have some significant areas of success. One of those will be highlighted later this evening when we talk about our English language learner program. Two other things just to note, one related to school resource officers. We've mentioned it before, and I will mention it again here. That is predicated on the ability of the Scottsdale Police Department and the Phoenix Police Department to hire sufficient officers to even provide school resource officers in addition to those that we have. We were successfully awarded a grant for 2 additional SROs, but the Scottsdale Police Department is not able to fill those for the 23-24 school year. The good news is that in the grant, we have until December of '24 to fill those positions, and the police chief and I will be working together to make sure that that can happen. But we can allocate all the money you want to SROs, but we cannot manufacture people to fill those positions. We do take school safety very seriously, and I appreciate the diligent and dedicated work of our school security officers, our partnership with Scottsdale Police Department and the Phoenix Police Department and the Paradise Valley Police Department. And we will continue to do everything that we can to implement security measures to ensure the safety and well-being of our students and staff. And finally, earlier this afternoon, the frequently asked questions portion of our website related to the maintenance and operating override vote was uploaded to our website, and so that information is available to help answer questions. And in the fall, we'll begin our town hall meeting in each of the 5 learning communities to be able to answer other questions as well. And with that, I'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel, and I do appreciate you clarifying information regarding the security on our campuses. Well, we're going to start our information and discussion items, and I told you I would work to improve my skills as the board president and allow you to introduce the information and discussion items. So back to you, Dr. Menzel.
Thank you, President Sanowski. The first information and report tonight is the Hanover Climate Survey, which governing board members received already, and it has been posted on board docs. With us from Hanover tonight are, I think, Jenny and Dara. I'm not sure who else might be with them to present this evening, but they are joining us from an East Coast time zone, so we gave them the first slot on information and discussion, and I understand they're on Teams, and so when you're ready, we can have you go live.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Menzel and the Board of Education for the invitation to join your meeting this evening. Before we dive into our research findings, I'd like to provide a brief introduction to Hanover Research and our partnership with Scottsdale Unified to give some context for why we are here this evening. As Dr. Menzel referenced, my name is Jenny Philpo, and I am the Relationship Director at Hanover on behalf of our partnership with Scottsdale. Meredith Melson is our Managing Director, also from the account management team, and we make up part of the overall account team for Scottsdale, while the other part is made up of our colleagues Mary Catherine Marr, Senior Content Director, Dr. Dara Praise, Content Director, and Dr. Brittany Becker, Director of Education Survey. As an overview, Hanover is a global membership-based custom research, data analytics, and professional services firm located in Virginia. Most of our staff work remotely from all across the country, and we serve organizations in all 50 states. We support over 400 school districts, educational agencies, and departments of education in our K-12 practice by providing end-to-end support for district administration level down to the individual teacher in the classroom. School districts partner with Hanover Research and our services to identify best practices, gather feedback, analyze data, and benchmark peers from a third-party objective lens. When working with clients on our research projects, our account team leans heavily on 200 full-time research employees with expertise in data analytics, survey design analysis, qualitative research involving in-depth interviews and focus groups, and secondary research. We worked closely with Scottsdale on a wide range of topics since 2018, from looking at grading, special education, and of course the annual climate survey, which we're here to discuss tonight. After we conclude our presentation, we'll allow time for Q&A, but for now I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Dr. Dara Praise, to kick us off. Dara?
Thank you, Jenny, for that introduction and overview of Hanover. We will now shift to the presentation and discussion of Hanover's methodological approach and the results of the climate survey. The 2023 climate survey was administered to students, staff, parents, and the community to assess perceptions of Scottsdale's district and school climate. This year's survey, which is consistent with past administrations, examined the school environment, instructional climate, behavior, and discipline. For the purposes of this presentation, we will focus on the current year results. However, the longitudinal perceptions are available in the full report and data supplement. I will now turn it over to Brittany Becker, our Director of Education Survey, to provide additional information and discuss methodology.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll begin with an overview of our best practices and processes and how those relate to Scottsdale's climate survey we conducted in March and April of this year. After that, my colleague will present the results of the survey. The survey was originally developed by a survey specialist on my team with a background in K-12 education survey research and was reviewed by Scottsdale's community members before finalizing the version that we administered. We designed surveys based on solid research on the topics, as well as following best practices in survey design. So when designing surveys, we use a balance of open-ended and closed-ended questions to capture as much information as we can without respondents quitting the survey because it's too long. I'm sure many of you have taken some of those surveys and know how painful it can be when it takes up too much of your time. The closed-ended questions, where you select responses from a menu of options, are great because we can show you graphs of the results and we can easily compare numbers. For example, if we see that 15% of respondents prefer option A and 85% of respondents prefer option B, we can draw pretty strong conclusions. On the other hand, open-ended questions are great because they can give nuanced information, but they don't allow for those clear comparisons because people can kind of put whatever they want in those boxes. Neither type of question is perfect, which is why we use both. To gain broader perspectives of the community's perception of district and school climate, this survey contains questions about emotional and instructional climate, building and personal safety, engagement, and leadership. There were also a number of items that were demographic and background questions. Nearly all of our surveys include demographic questions, and this is so that our team can segment results in a number of different ways to see if there are systematic differences between groups. The inclusion of demographic questions allows the district to align its support more specifically to particular groups. So just a general example, if we ask a question about feeling safe in the classroom and 75% of all students say that they feel safe, that seems okay but not great. However, if we look more closely and break it down by male and female students and see that 100% of male students feel safe, but only 50% of female students feel safe, this is how we can uncover specific problems that need to be addressed. And the only way we would know that this problem exists is if we ask those demographic questions. We also include a non-binary option because this is one of the ways in which people identify, and failing to include it could negatively affect data quality, and that those individual responses would be missing or inaccurately captured. As Dara mentioned, this survey went to students, parents, staff members, and community members and was offered in English and Spanish. Students had to be enrolled in grades 6 to 12 to complete this survey. In part, this decision was made because most surveys are not considered appropriate for students under the age of 11 or about 6th grade. Districts in response sometimes have questions about the validity of our data. We sometimes get questions about when an individual tried to take the survey multiple times, and there are concerns that people can tip the scales with multiple submissions. I want to reassure you that while sometimes people can try to take the survey multiple times, we have data cleaning processes in place so that we don't count those individual responses when someone tries to submit them multiple times. In addition, the software that we use, Qualtrics, also has methods in place to prevent these types of situations. Additionally, based on our experience with survey data, we look for patterns that flag a response quality as questionable. If a response is questionable in enough ways, we do not include that response in our final analysis. So this process starts once the survey is closed and we are no longer collecting responses. So an individual may take the survey multiple times while the survey is live, but that data is then removed during the data cleaning process. For this specific survey, of the 4,222 valid responses we received, we retained 3,811 following data cleaning, which is about a 10% drop rate in low-quality respondents. In terms of sample size and the representative samples, we did collect enough respondents from students, parents, and staff members to draw meaningful conclusions and are confident in our results. You will notice in the analysis section that we do not show results for community members, and note that results from small sample sizes should be interpreted with caution. So now I will pass it off to Dara to show you our results.
The following slides consist of results from this year's climate survey administration only. Two types of graphs are presented today. The first is the full-scale bar graph, which shows the distribution of all responses across the different response options provided to those taking the survey. With an agreement scale such as this, responses that indicate disagreement are orange in color, and responses that indicate agreement are green in color. The deeper the color, the stronger the perception. As such, in regard to positive school climate, based on these results, we can see that more than 50% of parent, student, and staff respondents indicated agreement that students feel welcome at school, feel like they belong, and are proud to attend the school. The slightly lower percentage of respondents indicate that students like school. The next type of graph is a visualization of only the top two scale points. Here, Hanover combines agree and strongly agree to show the percentage of respondents who select either of these scale points. We have also disaggregated the responses by respondent group. These results indicate a significant difference between the perceptions of the three groups. Students consistently express lower rates of agreement when compared to staff and students. This is a trend that we often see when comparing responses across groups. Oftentimes, there is a misalignment in the way the staff or parents perceive the environment versus students' perceptions of what they are experiencing. In regard to building safety, respondents indicate that they generally agree that their or their child's school provides a safe learning space, but they express less agreement related to schools not having issues with violence or theft. When disaggregating the responses by role, there are statistically significant differences between the respondent groups, once again, with students indicating less agreement. When examining personal safety, more than 3/4 of students, parents, and school staff indicate agreement with feeling safe going to and from school, feeling safe at school-sponsored events and activities held after school, and feeling safe at school. When disaggregated, although the results are more closely aligned between respondent groups, students continue to indicate less agreement. The last area we will discuss today relates to the physical environment of schools. Most student, parent, and staff respondents indicate agreement that the classroom environment supports student learning, there are clean common spaces, and schools are well maintained. In comparison with the other items related to this question, a notable decrease in agreement is found related to bathroom cleanliness. When disaggregated, we see similar trends related to the differences in perceptions among respondent groups, in which parent and staff perspectives indicate greater agreement than student respondents. The following section provides data related to the characteristics comprising respondents from this year's survey administration. The results of the survey, as Brittany had previously mentioned, are based on a random sample of students, parents, staff, and community members in the Scottsdale district. On this page, you can see the distribution of all respondents by role, gender, and race ethnicity, as well as student grade levels and special population affiliation, which is based on parent and student responses. This page presents the distribution of staff responses according to staff type, teacher grade levels, years of experience in Scottsdale Unified School District, staff years as educators, and staff years at their current school. This last page presents the distribution of students, parents, and staff members associated with each school. Now, we'd like to provide an opportunity to address any questions you may have regarding the survey methodology and results. Specifically, Scottsdale Unified School District can support with any questions related to how the results will be used. We will allow about 10 to 15 minutes for questions, and if there is anything we are unable to get to, we can follow up with the district. We can follow up with our responses to the district.
Thank you for that presentation. At this time, governing board members, do you have any questions on this topic? Board Member Warner.
You mentioned that you could, your system filters out repetitive surveys. So what happens then when you have one household and they are being done repeatedly on the same device? For multiple children, the parents, community members, and so on?
That's an excellent question. Yes, so that is why we don't, Qualtrics has a method where you can automatically disqualify people if they are flagged as being multiple submissions, and that's why we don't do that, and we allow people to go in and take the survey multiple times, and that way we can actually look at those indicators after the data has closed, and so we can kind of look at the individual responses from those flagged responses and see if it would indicate that they are from people in the same household taking survey different ways. So seeing if somebody took it as a parent, if somebody took it as a student, and looking at the responses themselves to see if it looks like it is an instance where it's somebody in the same household or a household sharing computer, or one person in the household just retaking as like the same role and providing the same responses.
So you have then the option to kind of look at and manipulate the data if there's looks like there's repetitive submissions.
I feel like we missed the first part of your question.
I said, so you do have the option to manipulate the data if it appears to you guys that there's multiple submissions.
Yeah, so we have a lot of standard kind of policies and procedures in place on how data should be treated and what to look for when flagging responses as potential ballot box stuffing versus not.
Thank you.
Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sinowski. Thank you for the presentation. There's a more complete data-rich set available to the public of the climate survey. Today was just a summary, high-level summary, so just a clarification for folks. I had a few questions about the community member, the data number. So there was an N of 19, and you did caution that that's not in the results on the end because there's so few data points. So my question, and it shouldn't be, so I appreciate that. How does that track in terms of that number of community member respondents to other K through 12 climate survey districts? Is that low? Is that normal? What does that look like if you benchmark against other districts? in general? No names.
I'll speak to my experience and then let my colleagues kind of weigh in if they have things pop up with their other experiences. But I would say generally my experience has been that it is more difficult to get responses from community members compared to other groups. Is that especially because with teachers and students, often you can have a captive audience where they're filling out the survey in the classroom during professional development or something like that. It really depends on the type of survey as well and the rapport that the district has with the community. We have some where they've, had years of trying to do outreach and things like that, where they tend to have better response rates. But again, it's just very variable by the nature of the survey, what the topic is, how close, or how important the topic is to the community, and the district itself. So some variability, but low community members is not uncommon.
Okay, and fair enough. I can't imagine too many community members who don't have students in the district would know how clean the bathrooms are. So I think fair enough. And I guess the question then goes to, is it worth the time to have that component in a survey, since the focus of the survey is the intra-district operations and not necessarily the external facing component of the district. You also mentioned, just on the same point, that the survey had been reviewed prior to use by, and I missed who that was reviewed by. Who were the reviewers? Who reviewed the survey? I thought that at the outset you had mentioned that there was an entity comprising someone's who reviewed the survey prior to its use. I just want a clarification on that. I missed it.
Sure, I can jump in. So in terms of the review process, Hanover, as Brittany mentioned, we developed the instrument based on best practices, and then we're looking for final approval or any feedback from our contacts at the district. That in the majority, this instrument was developed by our Hanover survey experts and aligned with best practices.
Okay, all right, and fair enough. I was just wanting a clarification on who kind of did at the district, who did a kind of QC review before it was released. So, and then this next question, so thank you, team, is to Dr. Menzel. So we have now for a few successive years seen the dismal reports on bathroom cleanliness, and I would ask that maybe a focused remedy be prepared, plan of action. I don't know what that looks like. I'm sure it looks different in the different grade levels, but presumably it looked like the middle school had a bigger cohort on the response rate, if I looked at that chart quickly enough. So that may have something to do with the data skew, or not skew artificially, but that might be able to pinpoint a focus for remedy. It would be great if we wouldn't see that number so low. And then Dr. Menzel, that was more a comment, observation, and request. And this is a question. What is your reaction to the results of the climate survey this year, please?
Thank you for the question. There are a couple of things. One on bathrooms, I would say in our teen town halls, these conversations have come up in the last 2 years. And we did see a difference when students engaged in helping with some of the problem solving, but student vandalism in bathrooms has been an issue. And so I think we can say that there have been some strategies to address that. And I don't know how the bathroom question looks in other schools, so we can ask that question. But it is something that we're looking at to make sure that we're attending to those concerns, but we also need to partner with our students in that regard because they're responsible for that space as well.
In general, over all of the questions, this survey was fairly comprehensive, or 360, so to speak. What are your next steps in responding to the survey?
So we'll review this with our leadership team. Each principal has the ability to look at the data from their school and look at the response from students in the middle school and high school where there were responses, and from the staff by building. And they can begin to see, okay, what kind of trends have we seen over time in our buildings? Are we moving in the right direction? Are there areas that surface as drops, for example, if you had a high score and it dropped? And then, I'm concerned about the sample size drop. So in the first 2 years, we were over 10,000. A fair amount of that was tied to student participation. We had a lot more students, and at that time, we surveyed 4th and 5th graders in addition to middle and high school. So that's part of the drop, but not the whole drop. I don't know if it's survey fatigue. I don't know if it was the time of year. So the number of respondents is a concern for me. I also wonder whether or not all of the questions are the right questions. So when we reviewed at a surface level, because we didn't have the report in front of us, but I had some of the data points with the Student Advisory Board, the questions about I like school, I'm proud of my school, those kinds of things. One of the students said, if you ask me that question as a middle schooler, I'm proud of my school, I never would have said yes, right? I don't identify with my middle school. If you ask me as a high school student, I'm a wolf or I'm a firebird, I'm a cat, there's more identification with the high school than there is the middle school. So one of the wonders I have is whether or not we're asking the right questions on some of these metrics for our students. And it's also not surprising. I think we looked at the pre-COVID data and the post-COVID data, and there was definitely a drop in some of the attitudes and perceptions towards school. And there's some work to do to create learning environments that are sufficiently engaging that students have a fear of missing out. So we've talked with the Student Advisory Board about how to create culture and climate in our schools where everybody wants to be at school at every day. So the data allows us to ask more informed questions, to look more specifically at trends in certain buildings to see if there are some things that we notice that require immediate attention. I think that was mentioned earlier in the presentation. And we have not done a full review at the building level to be able to answer those questions, but that's how we'll proceed in terms of our next steps.
Thank you. May I ask, may we offer a suggestion for consideration? And that is the Student Advisory Board is a fantastic group of high school students. Their purview does not extend through K through 8, but there are STUGOs in most of our schools, if not all of them. And perhaps that might be an untapped resource to be more comprehensive in the student voice that I think the data does suggest we could enfranchise more of the voices, and that is a suggestion for your consideration. Thank you. I have no more questions.
Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Thank you for that presentation and for staying up late for us. I just had one question, or I missed. Who from the district approved the questions on this latest survey?
So the survey questions were discussed with our district contacts in terms of the questions, because it is longitudinal and we were trying to maintain the ability to compare it longitudinally. The questions largely remained the same year over year in terms of having those items there.
Okay, so no one looked over the questions for this year, or someone did?
Oh, we reviewed the questions. We didn't change any except for how we collected the demographic information. Otherwise, we kept the same survey questions so that we could run the analysis across the years.
And I'll just add, typically, it's my understanding those kinds of conversations happen at Cabinet, and that happened this year at Cabinet too. Brought in previous survey, new survey, reviewed, approved prior to the launching.
Okay, and so we are open to looking at the questions and changing them from here on out if that's something, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanover team. I appreciate you making commentary about the survey access and security, and also about the data cleaning process, that there is something in place to help us get the best information we can. I have a question. It's not so much for the Hanover team, but maybe our part as a district. How are we communicating that the survey is open? How long is it open for? And how are we reminding people potentially to go in and complete the survey?
So I believe it was a 2-week window. Christine Harrington and her team pushed out communication through multiple channels. So we did it through the source, we did it through separate emails, we did it with our staff on multiple occasions. There were at least 3 or 4 different prompts and reminders to get people to respond. We do encourage our principals, maybe need to encourage a little bit more directly, to create some space in the school day for student participation. It doesn't take particularly long. I think it's 10 minutes roughly to complete. So it's not onerous from that perspective. We also have an opt-in for student participation, so parents have to sign off. This is not just given to all students, and that's compliant with ARS requirements. So I think there's some things we could do to get the response rate up. It's a little bit harder with parents and teachers. They can choose to participate or not participate. With students, we might be able to create more opportunities to get those more consistent across all of our schools.
And how are we addressing the issue that we might have families in our district who do not have technology access from their home environment? How are we reaching out to them and including them in this process? Anyone?
Dr. Benson's going to answer that.
Well, Dr. Benson's going to try to answer. So in the multiple formats of communication, so we would invite consistently persons that don't have technology to check with their building principal to learn how they could access with any survey or any information. If they don't have technology resources, we'd want them to, if they're reading it through the source, they get the magazine instead of through technology, paper copies, then we would be inviting persons, letting people know about the survey and contacting their principals. Moving forward, we have Parent Square that will allow us this to be even easier to push communications to all stakeholder groups, students too, as reminders, and keep it simple. And we can document as we've done that and the success rate, monitoring who's opened those messages, who's responding to those messages, that type of thing. So the analytics with that will help us with the communication moving forward.
Great, and possibly families could complete this survey on the school campus where their children attend. Perfect, good, that's all I have. Thank you, Hanover team. I did appreciate going through the details of this survey, and I hope that this guides our work moving forward as a school district.
Thank you all.
And we are going to move on to 9B, potential partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Scottsdale regarding Tunnelea Middle School. I believe Dr. Menzel and Mr. Ivan Gilreath are going to share some information with us.
I'm going to introduce Ivan, and he's going to go through the PowerPoint presentation. But what I would like to say is that we've been having a conversation for many, many months about the potential of partnering Scottsdale Unified School District and the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale. Ivan is a great thought partner. We've also, Dr. Jagodzinski's here from Tunnelea Middle School. Mr. Rayler has been involved in these conversations. And we're looking forward to just presenting both the rationale for the partnership and the potential that it represents for our students in South Scottsdale.
All right, thank you, Dr. Benson. Got to make sure first I know how to work this thing. So do I press it? All right, that's not it. What do I do? Do I just roll the right arrow? Oh, on the keyboard. I don't use the mouse.
There you go.
All right. There you go. We got it. All right. So as Dr. Menzel said, we've been talking for a while about the potential for a partnership at Tunnelea Middle School and also the Boys and Girls Club. And this is right in my wheelhouse because I'm 2 years here from Omaha, Nebraska, and I ran Boys and Girls Clubs out there for 10 years. And we have 5 of these such models in Omaha that follow a similar recommendation that I have for you tonight. But first, let me just talk a little bit about the Boys and Girls Club. We're a nationally known brand. Most folks know who we are. We're there for the kids who need us most to help them become productive and caring members of society. Kids who need us most can be many different things. It could be kids in poverty. It can be kids with food insecurity. It could be kids from middle-income families who are exposed to opioids or who experience cyberbullying or just need to get out of the house because they can't be there because there's so much dysfunction and tension in the house. We're there for all of those kids. In this particular case, this partnership we're looking for is more in the category of kids in poverty and kids with food insecurity. So let's look first at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Scottsdale, and we cover a wide area, which is Scottsdale North. We go as high as up to Anthem. We're in North Phoenix, we're in North Scottsdale, and we're on 3 Native American reservation sites. And so we want to add a 10th club to that, which is in South Scottsdale, which we feel is in desperate need of having something after school for kids to do. These are the schools we're looking at being part of this partnership. Obviously, Tanalea used to be K through 8, now it's 6 through 8. So what happened is a really big building became available, and Dr. Menzel asked if we would have an interest in doing that. He actually went to the right person because I've done that, and I know how much of a difference it can make in the community and for these kids who we're going to serve. So we're looking at these schools, and I'm not going to try to pronounce all the names. I'm new in town, so I can't pronounce them, but these are the schools and the populations of the schools, and I believe the 3 on the right are elementary schools and Tanalea. So you could see the number of young people who are there. You can see the percent that are on free and reduced lunch. Very significant percentage, 74%. This is really a conservative estimate of how many kids we would have coming to the club from these schools, 175 early teens from Tanalea, and then we would do transportation service to get some of the siblings or others from the other schools that want to come to the club. But this could well be over 300 a day. In fact, in some of the facilities I did it in Omaha, it was over 300 a day. So here's what we're trying to do. First of all, that big building that's available is an 18,000 square foot building, and we're looking to renovate that because right now it looks and feels like a school, and we want it to look and feel like a club. So we want to open it up a little bit, take some of the walls down, and then obviously we're going to have lots of great stuff in there. Kids don't come to the club from school because they want to go to more school. So you got to make it like it's a club with lots of fun stuff. And then when you get them in there, you do a little okey doke and you do a little education with them as well. But you got to get them there if you're going to serve them. So 18,000 square feet, we're going to renovate. Also, there's one gym at Tanalea, which I understand is always busy. And so we can't have a teen boys and girls club and not have a gym. So part of this proposal is that there's an outdoor court out there, and we're going to build a new 9,000 square foot gym where the outdoor courts are. Where obviously the kids from the school come in from the west, but we're also going to build an entry and exit on the east side on 64th Street. So after hour pickups and that kind of thing. The approximate cost of this is going to be $7 million. And Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Scottsdale will raise that money and pay for the building, and we will gift it to Scottsdale Unified School District in exchange for a 99-year rent-free lease. We will cover the $500,000 a year in annual operational expenses, most of that's staff, but it's other things as well. Scottsdale Unified School District will be responsible for utilities, maintenance, and janitorial services. And here's one of the best parts of this. So now you've got this new asset, this great building that we built that has, we'll get into the things that are in there, but it has a makerspace STEM innovation center. It's got game rooms. It's got a kitchen. It's got all kinds of things. During the day, when the clubs are not open, the school has access to that. So they can use it for recognition. A class could achieve all their goals, and like, if you achieve all your goals today, we're gonna go over to the Boys and Girls Club, play some ping pong, play some pool, play some basketball, go in the STEM center, do some things with, you know, the 3D printers and the virtual reality and the drones and all of those kinds of things. So it's a lot of good things that you can do with that. And you know, one of the things we'll ask for, so it's a $7 million building that we're raising the money and we're gifting, so we got to raise money. So we got to have the right to be able to go out and seek fundraising, and some of that will require some naming rights. So we would ask for the okay to do that as well. So the partnership rationale, pretty obvious. Just a couple of examples here. Many South Scottsdale youth live in poverty, and here's a solution where these kids have somewhere to go. We charge $25 a year for a membership. And that's all we charge. And for that $25, they get access to the club, access to our great staff, food and programming, and a safe environment. One of the reasons a lot of kids don't go to after-school programming is they can't get away there. You know, they can't get there, so they don't go. So what they do, they hang out in the street between 3 and 6, nothing but trouble in the street between 3 and 6. And so this is a great model because you got almost 500 kids in Tonalea. They won't all come, but their parents know they could just go right down the campus to the Boys and Girls Club. So you remove transportation as a barrier for kids getting there. You know, there's very few places for kids to go after school. So now that you have this here easily accessible, now there's a cost-efficient place for kids to go. You know, quality learning opportunities, a healthy meal. A lot of these kids, if they don't have somewhere to go after school to get a hot meal, they're probably not going to eat a hot meal that night. So we're there for those kids to provide a hot meal every night to make sure they're not going to bed hungry. We also have a lot of resources in academic support. We'll talk about some of those. We got Power Hour, which is homework help. We have a post-secondary scholarship coordinator that helps kids with getting their FAFSA together, getting ready for college, choosing college, and then we guardrail them through college to make sure that they're on the right track as they go to college. So all of those resources will be available for kids who want to take advantage of them. And you know, many South Scottsdale youth live in physically and emotionally unsafe conditions, and safety is our #1 priority. So when you come to the clubs, you know, a safe environment is the #1 thing we're looking for with our kids. So all of your young people who come to our club from those schools are going to come to a safe environment where they're protected every day. Some of the benefits from the partnership, a little reiteration here. Removes transportation barriers, location convenience, increases average daily attendance. When you have a club that like right there, so you got to make sure that you can get the kids in there, and we get the kids in there. First of all, the bells and whistles will be nice, but you got to have great staff. I grew up a club kid in Omaha and went off and did 30 years of corporate work and then came back to finish my working life back at the clubs. What gets people to come to the clubs are great people who work at the clubs who they know care for them. And you can have the junkiest club in the world, but if you got the right people, it's going to be full. We're going to have the best club in the world and the best people. So there's going to be kids who want to come to this club every day. Direct communication between teachers and our YDSs, our youth development supervisors. This is one of also the advantages, because our people have offices that are going to integrate with the campus. They're going to know the teachers, and they're going to be like, Johnny's really struggling in math today. Could you do a little extra with him in Power Hour today? He's got some homework, make sure. So you have that communication. Or having a lot of trouble with Johnny today. So you could have somebody sit down with him today and talk about his priorities and goals in life. So you have all of that communication that is going to make it better for the kids. The school district has the expertise to do the maintenance, utilities, and janitorial of the clubs, and that allows us to focus on child safety and impactful programming. And the food service, can't say enough about that. It's such a key for kids in poverty. People don't realize how many kids don't eat dinner at night, and this is gonna do away with that completely. In fact, a lot of these kids come to the clubs to eat, but they stay because it's so much fun. More benefits, increases the quality of after-school programming. So we're not daycare. I mean, they come there, and of course they have fun, but we have impactful programming. A lot of times there's teachers who are looking for a little extra money. So a teacher may want to come and work at the club a couple hours at night. Maybe a para wants to come and work a couple hours at night, and we encourage that because they know the kids. They know all of the kids. Communities appreciate this model, and so it's a great addition to the community. And who doesn't need additional gym space? So it's just a win-win. You get a new gym and additional school space that'll come in handy, and you can use that whenever we're not using it. That's the only requirement. If we're not using it, the school can use it. So it has, so many benefits of doing this. I won't go through this in detail, but I mentioned some of this earlier. All of our clubs have a maker space, and these are some of the things that are in here. I mean, poor kids don't have this, rich kids don't have this. Kids just don't have this. And the school can use this stuff when we're not using it. Tello drones, Edison robots, glow forges, Mars farms, 3D printers, virtual reality, so many things that we have a STEM curriculum coordinator who trains all of our educational coordinators to use this equipment. So the club has something for everybody. It has something for the athletes. It has something for, the kids who are more STEM sort of focused going forward. So you have this all available for the kids. Here's some of the other programs. As I told you, the career launch, we expose kids to potential careers. Keystone and Torch clubs, which are leadership clubs. Youth of the Year, which is our flagship, leadership and character development program. Power Hours, I told you before, homework help. For this particular group, we'll engage them with our America Reads program, which we do with Arizona State University, which is a literacy program, very important for the kids who come here. And just so many programs that we do here on a daily basis. So this is definitely a win-win scenario here, that we're able to serve more kids in South Scottsdale who really need it, and the district gets an asset, and we get more productive and caring members of society coming through here. So we're looking for, the okay to continue to proceed and try to make this happen. But I believe it's a win-win for everyone. So I'll entertain questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilreath. Governing board members, do you have any questions at this time? Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Thank you so much for that presentation. Very, very exciting. I just have a couple questions. Will you have an officer or security guard on duty for your club? Or do you normally?
We don't normally have security guards in our clubs, but all of our clubs are locked to where you can't get in, just like your office is. It's a mag lock door where you need that to get in, but we don't typically have officers in our club.
Okay.
Now, I will say this: in Omaha, I did have a couple of clubs who had officers in them. If you get to a point where you need officers in a club, we're not above doing that, but we don't have that right now.
Okay, just if you see a need, then you look into it.
Yeah. If we see a need, but it was a different scenario in Omaha. We stayed open until midnight on Friday, so a little bit later, a little different crowd. So, we had off-duty police officers there, but we're not above doing that. We'll do it based on need, but it's not something we do right now.
Okay, thank you. And then what hours were you looking at being open?
So we'll open up after school, and then typically we'll stay open for the teens until about 8 o'clock.
Okay, and then what about weekends? What happens?
We don't have weekend hours. We don't have weekend hours, but we do have special things that may happen on a weekend where they come in, or, a few months ago, we had a STEM Makers Fair over the weekend. We have things that go on over the weekend, but regular hours on the weekend is not something we do.
And is that something the school or the district could use on weekends if you all work?
Yeah, they could use it. Let's say we might have like a basketball tournament going on or something. We usually have junior sons teams. So I would imagine this gym is going to be a gym a lot of people want to use. Everything that's new they want to use. So we could have things on there. But the key thing here is the communication between Tamara and my staff, and just making sure everybody knows, when everything's available. Awesome. So if we're not using it, you can use it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. Thank you for the presentation. If you recall, but Board President Sanowski and myself were with you and Chief Walther, actually, when you toured the facility about a year ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see the diligence has manifested itself into a proposal. I had a few questions, though. So my students went through the Laguna or the Piper branches.
Yes.
So very, it's a very, very nice component for families in the area, whether you're at a Scottsdale Unified School District or a student or not. So the value here, to me, is obvious. One question, though, the Barker branch is not too far from the proposed campus with Tanalea, the joint campus with Tanalea. Do you feel like you have a critical mass of students who would be able to populate both branches?
Yes, well, so there's not a lot of young people that go from Tanalea now to Barker. I believe there's a bus, but it's not very many kids. It might be 20 or so. What you find with this model is you get the critical mass of your young people right from the school because of the convenience of there. So I don't think one is going to impact the other at all. In fact, in Omaha, I had two of these clubs that were 3 blocks apart from each other.
Okay.
And they took what was in their school, and that was plenty to make an impact.
So this focus would be to onboard new students in the middle school range to the Tanalea campus.
Well, it's going to be open, so we're available to kids 5 to 18. And so 5 to 18 can go there. What we suspect is that the lion's share are going to be from Tanalea. But we also believe that there are certain of those grade schools that they may have siblings at Tanalea or something, and the parents want to go to one place to pick them up or something. So you'll get some from those other 3 schools. And then the other thing is, probably initially, we're not going to have much of a high school presence at this club. But as these kids graduate from Tanalea, it's their club now. So now, just like we have a club right across the street. We have a club right across the street, the Barker Club, and gets 100 teens a day. And those are teens who grew up through the club, and it's their club. What's going to happen here is as these kids leave Tanalea and go to high school, Coronado or whatever, they're going to come back to this club because it's their club. So eventually, you're going to have a bigger high school population, but we're going to serve kids all the way through 5 to 18.
Okay. But with the focus just from proximity on the middle school grades, I would ask that, so there's a nice intersection of efforts to elevate the academic achievement in the middle school, and particularly in math, across the district, and in particular all the schools in the learning community in South Scottsdale. So your focus or the mention of a maker space, some STEM focus, particularly timely, and I would ask that actually you maybe even consider doubling down on that a little bit more, because that seems to be an age range that needs more support than kind of your standard approach to supports. And so, and I would also ask you consider digital literacy, not just reading literacy, to that component in your STEM makerspace or the broader curriculum focus. But I love this.
What I would say about those programs, those aren't programs we have now, but we're right there next to the school. That's where you partner, and you're kind of like, what other things can we do?
Yeah.
And I just have to say, we're not a school, and we're not trying to be a school, but we want to support what the schools do.
Well, I think those support services are
Yeah.
critical to the academic focus of the school that will be on campus. On the naming rights, is the request, would you be considering the district have some kind of prior approval just to ensure, not that we would be out there?
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to know, do you have certain requirements now around naming? It'd be good for us to know that beforehand, but as we get to where we're going to do some naming, we would share with you what we're going to do to make sure you're okay with it. We just wanted to make sure that you were okay with, that's how we'll pursue some of the revenue.
Well, I think it's a fair question,
Yep.
and I understand the fundraising component of it, but if there was, at least as a courtesy, that the district had some, prior approval, if not a soft approval, at least, just to know what's coming. We wouldn't want
Yeah.
to be endorsing something
We would
implicitly.
we would absolutely do that
Okay.
because we don't want to throw a name up on your
Well, in that
school
case, I'm
that you don't want to have up there.
Right, perfect, thank you. And then the last question is actually for Dr. Menzel. The district component of the cost share, do you have an estimate of what that would look like? I don't know if you or Mr. Reeler have an idea.
So we haven't run what the janitorial and utility costs would be for that space. It's probably something that we can run an estimate on an annualized basis. Given the square footage is going to increase with the building of the new gymnasium, with the 18,000 square feet, we should be able to look at the historical numbers and then kind of estimate from there what it would cost for the gym.
I would appreciate having some kind of cost estimate. Since there are some numbers in the presentation here, it seems like we should have some relative ratio of what our cost share would be.
Yeah, our plan would be, if there's interest in the governing board to move forward with this, is to take the next steps with legal counsel on what the parameters are of an agreement that we could bring forward to the governing board. We wanted to make sure that there was enough interest so that Mr. Gilreath and his board don't take any additional steps. If the board's like, there's no way we want to do that. If there's interest in this partnership and exploring it, then we will put together a formal proposal that takes together the outline that you heard tonight, does the cost analysis with respect to the impact on the district, and looks at all those numbers and working with legal, identifying what's possible.
Very good, thank you. I have no other questions, but I will say that I strongly support this moving forward, and thank you.
Thank
for your
you.
persistence. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Gilreath,
Yes.
I just want to, you guys have answered my questions already listening to this conversation. I do appreciate that you're considering, or the idea now is ages 5 through 18, because I think originally the thought was a teen center. So I think this is a win-win for our students and our community by accepting all school-age children into this form of an opportunity. I do have a question. So if we do decide this is something that we are interested in supporting in this partnership, what would be the estimated timeline from dig to done with a project like this?
You know, it's hard to say because a big part of this is now that, we get the okay here, we have to start doing the heavy lifting, get a project manager, put a capital campaign plan together. A lot of that depends on the capital campaign and how soon you raise the money. I would anticipate at most, this would be open within 2 years.
Okay, good, thank you. Dr. Menzel.
Just with respect to the naming rights, board policy FF is what outlines the naming requirements that the governing board has established. And thank you, Mr. Gilreath. I appreciate all of the time and energy and thoughtfulness on this partnership possibility and look forward to potential next steps.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Up next on our agenda for information and discussion only is the ELD Task Force update. Dr. Menzel, would you like to introduce the presenters?
Well, thank you, President Sanowski. I would like to invite Sean Crozier and Margaret Cerna to the podium. As you know, a couple of years ago, we launched an ELD Task Force. We had spent some time, governing board and superintendent, looking at our data and recognized this was a significant area for improvement. And they're here to share some of the positive news as well as kind of walk us through the history. So, Ms. Cerna?
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Don't touch, they said, and I touched. Okay, President Sanowski, Vice President Warner, board members, Dr. Menzel, and Mrs. Wagner. Tonight it is my honor to present, along with Scottsdale Unified School District Federal and State Grant Coordinator, Sean Crozier, the results of the 2022 English Language Development Task Force. Back in 2021, I was inspired by Superintendent Dr. Menzel to initiate the ELD Task Force as he expressed his ongoing support and interest in providing enhanced learning opportunities for all our SUSD scholars, especially and inclusive of our ELD students. I have been in the district for over 25 years and welcome the support of our superintendent for some of our most at-risk students. So in January 2022, we began our work. Since the beginning of our task force, our goals were very, very clear. Increase learning opportunities for our most at-risk English language learners. I would like to thank the committee that consisted of 21 diverse members, inclusive of regular classroom teachers, ELD coaches, ELD classroom specialists, district administration, principals, parents, and community members. I would like to acknowledge and thank our current board member, Corrine Warner, for serving and supporting our committee. We had many fun and interesting meetings. Currently, we have 726 active SUSD ELD students that encompass over 59 different languages. I am very proud of the continued academic growth and the program exit numbers of our ELD students. Our students still continue to be at risk. For example, it must be noted, of the current 726 students, 72 of these students have transferred between SUSD schools. Transiency adds continual risk to our ELD students' achievement, but thanks to our well-trained, dedicated, and talented teachers and staff, our ELD students continue to flourish. We are elated to report our vision and the current successes tonight, especially the increase in language arts and math academics achievement, as Sean will share with you. So Sean, I pass it to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Cerna, for the opportunity to really work with this task force and to really put together the implementation this year. It's been definitely one of my pleasures. Our ELD task force, as Ms. Cerna indicated, was formed to increase language proficiency for all English learners. And we really had three objectives that we wanted to address. Number one was increasing language proficiency levels of all English learners. Number two is developing an understanding of English language development program expectations and outcomes. And number three was identifying areas of need to support program delivery and implementation. From our task force, we developed three major initiative areas that we wanted to focus on. These three areas were clearly tied to our district strategic plan, and we were happy to do so because they really fit together nicely. These areas included an inclusive environment, which allowed us to be able to reach out to all stakeholders to make sure that all of our families and students were treated with dignity and had a sense of belonging that promotes student learning. Number two, professional development, which is tied to our goal of talented and qualified professionals. This was to make sure that we provided professional development aimed at supporting administrators and teachers in understanding English language development state compliance, as well as research-based teaching strategies that promote the success of English learners. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we needed to ensure excellence for all, which is tied to our goal of academic excellence and optimized resources. This is to develop a system to address the unique learning needs of all English learners. This year, we really focused on each of these areas, and we are proud to have been able to implement many of the goals that the task force put forward. In the area of inclusive environment, this fall, we began the process of supporting principals in knowing what to look for as they support their language development approach in their classrooms. We provided training for integration instruction in all schools. This is training to make sure that all of our teachers understand how they support English learners, not just our English learner specialists. And we supported the creation of walkthrough documentation in collaboration with district leadership through the Cognia preparation process. We also engaged in two amazing family engagement opportunities, which brought our families together with their students to learn from one another and explore areas that they maybe hadn't had an opportunity to explore before. One was at the Odyssey Aquarium, and the other was through the Phoenix Zoo, giving our families a chance to have those conversations. And we encouraged students to talk to their parents to read the signs that went with the animals and talk to their parents to really engage them. We also looked at our newcomer training and our newcomer offerings, particularly in response to many of the refugees that have joined us. And on April 28th, we were able to initiate our first Spanish Spelling Bee, our district Spanish Spelling Bee, in collaboration with our World Languages Department. And I'm proud to say that that did very well, and we're really looking forward to how we can grow that in the future. We also started in spring formal walkthroughs through ELD classrooms to be able to understand what was happening in the classrooms and really pinpoint areas of improvement that we could look at for future professional development. And finally, we've been wanting we have wanted to highlight our English learner successes as well as the successes of our English learner specialists. To that end, we have had several articles in employee newsletters highlighting tips as well as upcoming events in ELD. And we successfully nominated our own Kaya Hart as an ELD Specialist of the Year. And although she was not selected for the honor, she was one of our finalists for the state, which we're so proud of. In the area of professional development, one of the things that Ms. Cerna insisted on early in the year was that we have a theme tied to vocabulary, and we've had the theme this year of the Year of the Word, and that's been kind of our theme as we went through the year, talking about how do we really increase vocabulary for our students. In June, we brought in a nationally recognized vocabulary expert, Joanne Billingsley, who provided vocabulary development through our summer offerings. We brought her back in November to work with our ELD specialists on part 2 of vocabulary development training for all ELD staff. We also had the opportunity to bring Thinking Maps Path to Proficiency training to all of our elementary, and we are planning to include our middle and high school folks this next year. This provides specialized training in how to bring thinking maps specific to learning vocabulary, specific to learning language. And we wrapped perspective training in with our integrated teacher training, trying to make sure that teachers understand that we have, as a state, moved from a model that used to be 4 hours of pull-out where students, EL students were EL students and other students were their students, and understanding that the new model with 1 hour of pull-out means that all teachers have to expect all students to be their students and treat all students as their students and have the tools that they need to be successful in the classroom. And so our own ongoing professional development has continued throughout the year and will continue. And finally, in the area of ensuring excellence for all, we ensured that staffing compliance with ADE was met. We have worked with our ELD coaches to identify what was currently happening in mentoring. One of the things we're looking forward to next year is to bring more mentoring opportunities for our students so that we can pair some of our younger early EL students with perhaps other students that have already exited the program and have that mentorship happening. We have continued to have collaborative meetings with our ELD coaches on a monthly basis that include also our community specialists and the site administration to make sure that we're meeting the needs of each student. At those meetings, students are specifically discussed as to what their needs are and how we can best meet those needs. We have also instituted progress monitoring which has been made so much more efficient through the Hunuit dashboard, which allows us to take a look at our EL students and how they're progressing, and to provide coaching for our teachers on how to best meet those students' needs. And we have begun putting together integrated teacher resource binders. These will be going out at the beginning of the school year with the information about EL students that will go into the general classroom, so that a teacher will have a binder with their EL students and understand what their needs are, what their past has been, and tips for how they can help support them. Our preliminary results have been fantastic. We're really, really proud of these results. As a whole, last year, our students made 37% made progress compared to only 32% the previous year, and 21% exited the program. They reclassified, having met English proficiency, compared to only 19% the year before. That compares very favorably to the state, as you can see. Our English language learner achievement on AASA has also improved considerably over the last couple of years. ELA improved by almost 8% from 2021 to 2022, and our preliminary data is indicating that that is improving again this year. And so we are seeing improvements in the area of ELA, which is particularly important because by definition, EL students are students who have already been tested as not being proficient in English. So if they're meeting a level of proficiency in English on AASA, it makes a huge difference. In math, we've also improved by almost 13% from 2021 to 2022. In 2021, we had 0% of EL students score highly proficient in math. Last year, 2022, we had 2%, and this year I'm proud to say we've had 14 students who scored highly proficient in the area of math who are current EL students. And you can see that we have also brought down, and this is the most important thing, brought down our minimally proficient numbers in both language arts and math. There's still work to be done, but the fact that we're moving in the right direction is definitely worth noting. For our next steps, in the area of inclusive environment, we are continuing our prospective training this fall with our teachers. We've already begun making appointments with our schools to ensure that we can get in during new teacher and more importantly, as teachers come back for the school year, to have that training so that they're ready on day one. We are continuing our family engagement to support our families, and one of the things we're looking at this year is how we support our families to support our students. How do we provide resources so that our families of English learners can help support their students at home and develop that continued English proficiency? We are also working on our newcomer model to support our new and refugee students who are coming to us, many of them with a lot of other issues that need to be addressed, and so we're making sure through our community specialists that we're able to address those. We are also increasing our professional development opportunities, both for our general ed teachers as they work with EL students, as well as specialized training for our EL specialists. And we are continuing to use the data dashboard to help drive our decisions and to get more training out to our teachers to make sure that they understand how they can look at that dashboard for their students and understand what they can do to support their students. And of course, we are continuing to focus on our middle and high school students. We know from the data that middle and high school students in ELD struggle the most. And when you consider that they're expected, particularly in high school, to take high school course level work, perhaps without that reading and writing background, we have to make sure they get there as fast as we can. And so we're working diligently to make sure that we're meeting those needs. With that, we'd like to open up to any questions.
Vice President Werner.
So great job. That was amazing. And I did have the honor to serve on this task force with 21 other people. And it was really the sheer success is also a result of 21 people with different opinions coming together, compromising, finding common ground in order to create the best result for our students and their academic achievement. And English is my second language. I came to this country and I had to go through a program as well. And not only are you learning a new language, you're learning the curricula, you're learning a new culture, and you're adapting to totally different traditions sometimes. And while our ELD students may be some of the most vulnerable, they're also the most driven and ambitious when given a framework in which to operate in. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Hurt-Wells.
Thank you, Board President Zanowski. Thank you for the presentation. It's very exciting. My one observation is this appears to be very similar to an action item set for special education. Was there some, I see Dr. Williams in the audience here, was there some informing?
No. With respect to the task force, not as much, although we did invite special ed to work with us on the task force. However, Dr. Williams and I work very closely in the Ed Services Department, and I think we both have a perspective of how important it is that students feel that they are connected and a part of the school, that they are not separated or segregated from the school. And I think I believe that drives both of our desires in making sure that our students are receiving what they need. We know that students in ELD do need support, and we want to provide that support, but removing them from the curriculum in order to provide the support probably is not the best. And so working with our amazing teachers to understand how they can support them in the classroom is critical.
Yeah, agreed. And I think if I recall the task force from the special education a couple of years ago now, presenting findings, but is a very similar kind of findings that in order to achieve that inclusivity and actionable are a lot of the actions that appear to have been implemented, at least preliminarily, by you folks. So I'm glad to see that there's some, at least like some outcomes that appear to be positive. The granularity in the data is very important here, because that's where you see the short-term movement, right, before you see the long-term gain. And actually along those lines, I wonder, would it be reasonable to be able to have kind of a 5-year time frame of the ELD students with their Azella scores, so we can kind of start to see a slope take shape over time? That would be a nice perspective to have. And then along those same lines on data integrity, what was the sample size? Can you remind me? You may have actually said that, but what was the sample size? How many students were in your testing data? Both
Yes.
last year and this year?
There are 726 EL students.
Okay.
All of them are required to take the AASA test, as well as the Azella test.
Okay.
So the data is based on their results
Okay.
For those students who are active ELs.
And Sean, do you know last year, was that about the same number?
Roughly,
Issues?
yes.
Okay.
It's been fairly stable. There was a little bump last year in the 2021-2022 because of the Afghan refugees population that moved in.
About 60 students.
Okay, so there may have been a little bit more data in previous, okay. Do you know if those, if Dr. Bachna has done her magic wand over the number to see if it's statistically significant, some of these increases that on their face are impressive. Are they statistically significant increases over the previous year, do you know?
I don't have Dr. Bachman's magic wand, but I will say that the numbers going from, let me go back to those numbers again. Those numbers going from 32 to 37% for making progress, 19 to 21%. Those are some relatively large numbers. I would expect that would be significant.
That was actually why I was asking about the sample size.
Yeah.
Does that look like? I would
the
agree,
sample
but
is
I don't know if it is or not. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's yeah. So great job. I think it's very impressive, but it would be nice to, if you can think about kind of a more holistic data set, so we can start to see a slope take shape. And identify some best practices of what you're doing. It seems like it could be scalable and translatable. So thank you for all your hard work. That's fantastic.
Dr. Hartwell's one thing that we kind of glossed over that I just want to mention, I'd like to give a shout out to our ELD coaches. For the first time in SUSD, we have a fundamental training, the fundamentals that we do, where all our teachers have to be trained on what the rules and policies and regulations are working with ELD students. It's also been a goal of ours to make sure that our regular classroom teachers and our ELD teachers collaborate for the benefit of all the kids. And with our coaches developing this fundamental training, it's been incredible. So shout out to our coaches.
Wow. Thank you, very important. I also just, a last parting comment. So the data that's shown is ELA and math. There's no science data, but I realize that may not be part of the SL exam. But I will comment, math is a universal language, right? Numbers are a universal language. So I'm particularly keen to see those numbers continue to move in that. I mean, your deltas there are more significant in reading, so that's unsurprising to me. I don't know if that was surprising to you or not, but it wasn't. That's not to me.
And we plan on increasing those numbers more and more because, yes, math is reading of numbers. And it's also, like you said, universal, and our ELD kids tend to do better in math than in ELA. But when it starts getting to the point where they have to start reading the word problems, that's when we encounter difficulties. But again, that's why it was the year of the word. We need to make sure that we teach math-specific vocabulary.
May I, that's an excellent point, and it reminds me of my perennial issue that I will raise, and that is an observation that English language, ELD students or English as a second language students oftentimes excel in the computer sciences and the digital sciences, and so much so that their overall academic achievement through college and their earning potential is substantially increased with computer literacy along the way. And there is some data or evidence to suggest, because of their bilingual abilities, that it actually is a value advantage.
Absolutely.
So I would ask that that be on the radar screen at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Crozier and Ms. Cerna, thank you for a beautiful presentation. As you were going through the presentation, I looked at it a little bit in advance, but to hear it from your words, it really struck a chord of how much work is being done in our district, focusing on this particular student population who has been at times overlooked. So I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing on board all employees. Well, you mentioned certified teachers. So that was the one question that didn't get answered. So how are you bringing on our support staff that the students interact with on a daily basis on their campuses with this important training and understanding of the needs of students?
Yeah, absolutely. So our fundamentals really went first to our teachers and our admin staff. That was rolled out this year. As we look at our next steps, that's one of the areas that we want to focus on. Our support staff that work directly with ELD students are getting that training and getting that support. It would be the others that are perhaps in the classroom that we want to make sure that we get to as well.
Special areas, et cetera. So we're building it as we go along.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. This is very important to see this progress too. I agree we have a long way to go, but we do in a lot of areas in our district. So thank you for putting this together and focusing our district resources on this. Thanks. Nicely
All
done,
right,
guys.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
At this time, we will move on to our consent agenda. There have been many amendments made, but I'm going to make a motion to approve the amended consent agenda. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. Thank you. All in favor to approve this consent agenda as amended, say aye. Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Okay, I'm going to go in the order as they're listed, and I will call out the ones that were pulled, and the person who pulled that item on consent agenda will have the opportunity to lead the discussion. First is F, the performance-based pay for specified administrators. Ms. Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. So, who will I direct questions to? Okay, Dr. Menzel, is this a one-time performance pay stipend that we're looking at approving for the 5 listed administrators, or is this something we're looking to add to their annual contract?
So the rationale is to add it to their contract. Currently, Teachers receive 301 pay for performance pay. We added performance pay for administrators through the most recent round of IBN as a part of their compensation. Cabinet level of individuals have had performance pay since before I got here. So there's a group of individuals, directors and executive directors, who don't currently have it. The ones listed sit at the cabinet table, but they don't have cabinet level contracts. So the recommendation is to put together a tiered performance pay system that acknowledges what we've been doing for other similarly situated individuals historically in the district. These ones have been omitted, and so this would give us the ability to put together that system.
Okay, so by doing this, are we still leaving out a section of our administrators that will not be getting performance pay?
So the intent would be for this year to address it for the people who sit at the cabinet level. The recommendation, part of why we wanted to bring that back in August, is that what we put together as a recommendation is something that then could apply to similarly classified directors and executive directors in the following year. The timing matters in terms of when we bring things forward. So the intent would be that in the 24-25 school year, we would address those individuals as well.
Okay, so have we budgeted for this? Was that part of the budget that was approved earlier?
Board Member Carney, it's something that we've looked at over a couple times, and so yes, there is there is capacity within the budget to be able to offer that.
Okay, I guess I would just say that I'm just concerned with more spending out of our M&O. We just awarded $21,348 to Dr. Menzel for his performance pay, which was 3 times what he received last year. And then 4 of our cabinet members, that's another $20,000 that's budgeted, and this would be another $25,000 in addition budgeted to go to our top administrators, our highest paid employees. And while I would love to see everyone make more money, everyone does, works so hard and makes so much. I'm not sure that this is a good use of district funds at this time.
Vice President Warner.
Thank you. I have a question on the KPIs for these particular performance pays, and have they been set already?
So not for the ones that are here. That would be something we bring forward in August. You may recall that the board approved the performance indicators for the cabinet level contracts earlier in the year. And to the point that Board Member Carney made, not every individual earns their full performance pay. We use that as performance criteria. So there are things where somebody can get 80% or 50%, and in some cases they didn't make it at all. So it's a percent of that total. So the numbers you read would be if everybody got everything that was a possibility. That isn't typically the case, and we haven't finalized what the performance pay amount would be for these other individuals. That's the other part. So those numbers, the range is going to likely be lower than what you identified.
And so, back to the KPIs, I would strongly encourage those KPIs to be towards academic achievement and safety, enrollment, and teacher retention. So is that something that will get brought back to the board for approval, what the KPIs are?
Yeah, the way that we've structured performance pay for the cabinet level contracts is the performance pay agreement comes to the governing board for approval. If these are added, we would treat it the same way for this group.
Thank you.
And to weigh in here, as I understood this, we are being asked to approve a benefit that the amount has not been established yet, and the KPIs have not been created or specifically applied. So it's really like a retention placeholder for these individuals. Is that correct, Dr. Menzel?
It indicates that as a part of their employment for next year, they'll be eligible for performance pay. The amount and the performance indicators are to be determined. Similarly, we haven't determined the performance pay for those who already have it in their contract, whether it's mine or the other cabinet level members. That typically happens in the fall. Usually the governing board starts with mine. From there, we work to look at what are the district approved KPIs, what are the priority KPIs, what role does someone have. So someone, I don't mean this in a bad way, but Shannon Crozier's performance indicators are going to be different as our CFO than Dr. Benson's, who's overseeing all of teaching and learning. So I think we also try to make sure that the KPIs are aligned with the specific scope of responsibility of the staff member.
I appreciate hearing that, because that was actually one of my questions too, was the KPI priorities. But this will come back for board approval, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. I just turned the microphone off on myself. A clarification, our highest paid folks on our campuses are actually our SROs, where there are some. Is that correct? The highest paid staff, so to speak, even though they're not considered our staff, on our campuses are actually the SROs, where there are SROs. Is that correct?
Board member Dr. Hartwells, SROs are paid through us based off of their salary. I don't know that I would say they're our highest paid members. I mean, what we pay to the city of Scottsdale is pretty high, but in terms of how many that represents, I don't.
I'd like clarification on that.
So I'm just trying to, if I understand it, I think there are a couple of variables here. One, we pay 75% of the total cost of the SRO, so not the full freight. Secondly, if I'm comparing between the cost of the SRO and the cost of a high school principal, that's going to be one number. If I'm looking at the middle school principal, it's going to be a different number. So we can run that analysis. Just want to be sure that we're comparing apples to apples when we do so.
Yeah, that would be useful information, I think, for everyone to have. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about this? All right, Board Member Kearney, would you like to make a motion?
No, you can go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve the performance-based pay for specified administrators, and this is in regards to 10F on our consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor to approve this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Opposed by Board Member Kearney. All others were aye. And so that motion passes 4-1. Moving on to K, thank you. Reclassification of job posting for risk management position. Vice President Warner.
Yeah, I want a clarification on this. I just didn't get answers to this previously. So I think this is either Alexis or Shannon, or Ms. Crozier or Ms. Wilson. And it appears that this position at some point included the Title IX coordinator, or the duties of Title IX.
Yes, that is correct. The position originally existed with multiple other duties assigned to it. It was then eliminated, and risk management was, duties were kind of passed out to other employees and broken up, which is not the most optimal way to handle that. It was then brought back and changed to an administrative position, and at that time, they added Title IX duties to it. When that job became vacant, and actually as that person was in that position, Ms. Wilson and I started looking at, and at that same time, risk management and legal kind of separated itself out as well. So there was a reorganization within risk management, workers' compensation, and legal matters. Within that position, we started looking at, is the structure the right structure for that department? And part of what was coming out is that Title IX is really an investigative type position, and really involves, in some cases it could be involving legal, in other cases it could be involving human resources, depending on what the type of the Title IX question was. And so because of that, we started looking at it as, is that really the right spot for a risk? Should risk management be doing something that's also very investigative, like Title IX inquiries would be? And from that, once that position was vacated, again, began doing research with other districts to see how they handle Title IX and risk management, and that's not something that we were finding that was put with the same job. So because of that, we looked at it and said we felt like that needed to be separated out and reclassify that back down to a classified position, which is similar to our workers' compensation position.
Right. So, but even though it's an investigative position, it's still a management position because they're farming out who's going to be doing the investigation. So whether it's going to an attorney or it's going to an actual investigator and so on. And so I actually think it's quite fitting to be within a risk management position because it is a risk for our district if we have Title IX violations. And so I'd actually like to see that remain with that. I think, I'm not sure who has it right now, but it is an important position. And I think it's actually a mistake to separate them at this point. And I think that whoever you guys bring in for risk management would be a great person to manage that. Thank you.
Dr. Hurtwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. I have a clarification question. This is a follow-up to Board Member Warner's question. Where is the Title IX oversight sitting now, then? If this were to be approved, what happens to that functionality? Where'd that go?
So the position has been sitting vacant since early October of this year. Prior to having this position, Dr. Sakos helped with those investigations. When the position became vacant, it went back to her area, so it's been sitting with Dr. Sakos.
Okay, so just so I understand, the position is not held by anyone, but it's under the purview of Dr. Sakos' secondary education responsibilities?
Title IX is under Dr. Sakos right now. Risk management, the position of risk management is actually under me. And so when it was combined, I had risk management and Title IX. When this would put risk management, would continue under me. And then Title IX investigations and looking that had previously been under Dr. Sakos, we put it back under her when the position became vacant.
And can I add, many Title IX complaints originate at the middle school or high school level and/or are related to athletics. So I believe that's likely why it ended up with Dr. Sakos historically, because of where those complaints typically generate in her area of responsibility.
Thank you for the clarification.
So I did see.
Board Member Warner.
Thank you. With having that fall under Dr. Sakos, who's the catch-all in this district, I think she probably is the one that is the fixer of things. Knowing that we need to have a designated coordinator that is listed on our policies and on our website, I'd still like to see that go back to the risk management position. So I'm not going to be approving this today.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? All right, seeing that there are none, I'd like to make a motion to move forward item K, the reclassification and job posting for risk management position. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
That motion passes 4-1 with Board Member Warner in opposition to it. We're going to move on to Q, and that is approve the use of TIPS contract for the purchase of a card ID system district-wide. Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Okay, I have a lot of questions on this contract and this card ID system. So who should I direct those to?
So to both Mr. Friedman and Ms. Crozier would be the two individuals who will collaborate in responding based on the question.
Okay, and I appreciate the communications we did have and the questions that you were able to answer for me and for the board today. Okay, so this was a piloted program in the Coronado community that happened the past 6 weeks or so, and now we're rolling it out district-wide. And this started as IDs for bus riders, correct?
Yes, so approximately a year almost 2 years ago, we upgraded the software within the transportation department. As a part of that software upgrade, one of the options that was available and put into that package was to be able to do what they call as a ride share or ride. And so with that, part of that package then allowed transportation, if we moved to a system of basically tapping or swiping to get on and off the bus, for us to be able to better track riders and where they're, to do better routing for those riders, to be able to, we have to turn into the state a record of all students, the number of students that ride the bus every single day. Right now, that is being done essentially with the bus driver taking account as students get on the bus and then writing a number down on a piece of paper. So this would allow us to be able to better track how many students are riding the bus each day for that mandatory reporting. But the other part of it that was really intriguing to administration was that it allowed us to be able to see who's on the bus, when they get on the bus, when they get off the bus. And the importance of that has to do with safety. One of the things that unfortunately can happen during the beginning of the school year, especially with our youngest children, is they get off of the bus. For a kindergartner, you have to have a parent there waiting for you. But a first grader or above, they get off the bus, whether there's a parent there or not, and are then left to get home or to their destination. And so unfortunately, what can sometimes happen is that maybe a student gets off at the wrong spot, that they didn't realize mom's not there, or they go home with friends and mom and dad may not realize their guardians may not realize that they've gone home with friends. We're not able to tell who got on the bus because we're not keeping a log of every single student. There's no way to manually do that. So with this software, we can see when they got on, when they got off. If we get that unfortunate call in the afternoon of, I'm not sure where my child is, we can go and see, okay, they got on the bus and it looks like they got off with their friend. Check the friend's house to see if they're there. Or they got off at this stop, the Boys and Girls Club is right there. Let's check the Boys and Girls Club to be able to see. So what kind of drove that is the idea of being able to see, one, who's riding the bus, better manage our routing system, but two, being able to have that safety and security of when they get off of the bus, or when they're on the bus, at least knowing who's there and where they're getting off at.
Okay, so how many bus riders do we have district-wide?
That is a great question that I would need to ask I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. I don't want to give a wrong number.
That's okay, if you can look into that and then get back to us. But I think it's important because we're rolling this out for bus riders, but yet we're doing it for every student. We're replacing every ID with this digital ID for every student, even though the majority don't ride a bus. So
there's an additional part with that, is that if you don't, even though you may not normally ride the bus, we do have students who will hop on the bus because they're going to go to Boys and Girls Club that afternoon. The other part that we see to that is for field trips. So if you're riding a bus to go to the zoo or some other field trip, this would allow you to be able to see who's on that bus for that field trip, as well as athletics. Beyond using it for transportation, the RFID part is for transportation only, but those cards also have scanner capabilities on them, which most of our cards have had at the high school level. So in addition to tapping that to get on the bus, that card can be read. So when you're going through that cafeteria line, what's happening right now is they're having to ask students what is their ID number. Little ones don't always remember, and it takes longer to plug that in. These cards also have a scanner on it, so the cafeteria worker can just scan that card, bring that their lunch, and move them through that line quicker. Additionally, they use it in the bookstores if or can use it in the bookstores if they're purchasing they're purchasing prom tickets or other activities or paying for class fees, they can scan that barcode. Same thing with checking out books in the library. That barcode is also readable through our Destiny program, so they can scan that barcode and easily pull up that student, regardless of if they remember their student ID number or not.
okay, so our current IDs don't have that capability with the scanning of the...
Not all of them do, and that's one of the things we've run into, because the cards are provided by a outside vendor, by whoever takes the pictures at that school. So what we've run into this year at our elementary schools is they don't necessarily have those ID card or the scan cards on them. It's something that can be put on, but we found that it hasn't been happening as often and frequent as we'd like.
Okay, so this is a mandatory program for every student at every school that we're rolling out these new digital IDs with radio frequency IDs. Okay, even if they don't ride the bus and parents don't want them to have this type of technology on them, it's mandatory.
So right now, it's mandatory for all students to have an ID. This is the ID card that we currently have. So all students would be receiving that card.
Okay, and will these radio frequency IDs be used to track daily attendance?
No.
Never.
Never. The only capability we have at this time to use them for is the transportation software to get on and off the bus. That is the only capability for RFID that we have. They can be scanned for the bookstore or like the cafeteria, but the RFID is only capable with our transportation software. It's something down the road that we've talked about. If we wanted to go that direction, it would open up more capabilities. It is not something we have purchased. It's not something we've even begun to explore. The only thing we have it used for and could possibly use it for at this time is transportation.
Okay, so right now we're looking to approve 1 camera and 1 printer for every school site. But we could add additional cameras if we decided to use these RFIDs in other ways on our campuses.
So the camera that we're purchasing is just to take the picture of the student and then reprint a card. So it would only be the way we're rolling it out is that the picture is the card is going to be printed out en masse by the card manufacturer. And then if a student needs a new one or they've now newly enrolled in the district, then the camera is used to take their picture and print out a new card. But it's not like a camera to monitor anything. It's literally to take their picture for the ID card.
Okay, and then do we know what frequency are the RFID cards are?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that more.
Okay.
Mr. Friedman, can you please weigh in on this about the frequency and the term digital ID?
Sure. President Sanowski, board members. The RFID is a single piece of the card that is the reason that we had to use the contract that we did and stuff is that it's a very specific piece of, it's not like an RFID like our staff badges. It doesn't work with our card readers. It doesn't work with everything else. It only works with, specifically currently, with the software that we purchased for the buses. So we currently cannot use it for doors, for tracking anything else. And the main goal of the rolling this out to all students as opposed to just bus students is we have had an ID program in the district for years. And this past year, as our DIGIT, as we were awarded earlier, DIGIT IDs is the I in DIGIT, we have seen where some of our schools, currently all the schools get IDs, but some of especially the elementary schools, don't get IDs till middle of the school year because we rely on private vendors to come up with a design, work with our schools to come up with whatever it is. So by doing this, we allow the district to come up with what our IDs look like. They're standardized across all 29 campuses because at the end of the day, yes, we use it for the buses and we use it for all kinds of other things, but at the end of the day, this is a security feature. It's not a piece of clothing. It's something that we use to identify people that are supposed to be on our campus. And it helps us identify people that should be there, that shouldn't be there, and what their purpose is. So this goes along with visitor management software and the other stuff where we're making students wear an ID that is consistent across all 29 campuses. Not this campus looks like this and may get it. We literally had campuses that didn't get IDs until winter break. And then as far as calling it a digital ID, there's nothing digital about it. The RFID, like I said, that is a digital piece to it, but there is no digital ID. It doesn't store information. It doesn't do anything. It is literally a coded number that allows us to say this coded number matches this student so that when they get on the bus, that is all we know. And the bus drivers don't even know all the details. It doesn't pull up their student record or anything. It literally just shows are they supposed to be on that bus or not, and then we can dig further if needed.
Can I add to that too? The other part of that for the parents is that they will be able to download an app that will show them where the bus is at. They'll be able to communicate through that app if the bus is running late. But the parent will also be able to see, okay, my child is on the bus and I can see they're 2 minutes out or 5 minutes out. I need to get to the bus stop, or I see that they've been dropped off at the bus stop. So the parents will have the choice to be able to download that app and track where their student is on that bus and where the bus is at, if it's on time or late, or where it is in the process.
Great. Yeah, I absolutely understand it for safety measures for our bus riders. We're hearing from a lot of parents who aren't interested in this for their regular student who is not riding the bus. But my last question for you on this is, who is tasked with overseeing the safety and the protection and the maintenance of this whole program?
I drew the short straw, and that'll be my project to oversee in conjunction with all of the departments, because I'll work with David Jacobson, our transportation department, for the bus piece of it. I'll be working with Patty Bilberry in nutrition services. I'll be working with Michelle Watt and her team on the actual technology portion of it. So my department will be overseeing all of the management, I guess, and the safeguards, and making sure that what we're doing with it is what it's designed to do. And that's falling to me.
Okay, and then I lied because I said it was last, but I couldn't, I know you sent the contract to us. I wanted to see the contract. We never got that, and it wouldn't open. So if you could resend that.
Yes, I'll make sure to resend that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Snowski. Actually, as a follow-up question to Board Member Carney's question on the IT component, Dr. Watt, can you confirm there's compatibility with the technology, the RFID technology, and InTouch and the Titan, those software programs that we're using? That is correct. That's been verified. Perfect. Thank you. And I'll just clarify, radio frequency energy level is substantially lower than the energy level of the light that you see in this room. And it's also much lower than your microwave. So it's one of the lowest in terms of energy of light on the light spectrum. Okay. So since that question was raised, I thought I would answer it. Thank you for the clarification.
Vice President Warner.
Well, Mr. Friedman, I'm a big fan of your work, and love what you're doing to promote or to make our schools safe. And there has been some confusion with the RFID tags, and when I went on the website, it says the tags are used to track movements of goods and ensure that they're in right place, right time. So the concerns I got from parents was exactly that. They're concerned that there's a tracking component to this that is, something they're not comfortable with. And I don't know what other options were looked at for this particular, to fill this particular hole. And do we have to use RFID in order to have that security component to know that our students got on the bus and off the bus? So
The short answer is we've evaluated for a long period of time different methods to do this. This system is good because it's not a GPS system. There are RFID systems that are GPS enabled. This one is not. When we say that they can track the bus through the app, they're not tracking their students' RFID tag. It's not a strong thing that sends out a big signal for everybody. It's tracking the bus and the location of the bus. So it says, yes, my student got on this bus, and it shows where the bus is based upon the bus software, not based upon the child's RFID specific software. So to answer your question, we did evaluate a lot of things. They've been evaluating this before I even got here with various ideas. And the benefit of this system is that it is a closed system, but it's compatible with stuff that we already have. And there are opportunities for the future, and we can't say that we're never going to do anything, but anything that we do with it would come back before the board, because right now we are doing it for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to, one, have standardized IDs, and two is to have keep track of the students and people that board our buses, whether they're going for a field trip, whether they're coming to school, whether they're going to a sporting event, because in the event of an incident that occurs on a bus, to be able to pull up a roster and give it to Department of Public Safety or local law enforcement or fire department say this is who's on the bus is a huge thing, and that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Dr. Hurt-Wells.
Yeah, thank you, Board President Snowski. I was just thinking as you were speaking, Mr. Friedman, as an analogy, would this be a fair analogy when you get on an airplane, you have to scan your ticket, and they know that you're there? So the manifest is electronically documented.
I'm not familiar enough with the system, but basically it's
Just
the
the
same thing,
concept,
yes.
right?
Where you're scanning your ID, that each student would tap their ID, and the bus driver would be able to say, yes, you're supposed to be on this bus, or no, you're not. Not that we wouldn't deny them to get on the bus, but it's to say, okay, I'm going home with my friend today, or whatever else, to be able to then, when they get off the bus, say, yes, we know that you get off at this stop. So in my first month of being here, I think there were at least 8 times that I was called out after hours to come find a child who wasn't lost but just didn't get off where the parents thought, and then we have to start tracking them down. And so this will make that a whole lot easier moving forward.
Thank you.
I would just like to add that as a parent of a student who has gone through Scottsdale schools, I would have really liked this technology for my daughter when she was in first grade early in the school year, got off at the wrong stop, and it was traumatic. So I love that we're looking at being creative and connecting our resources to be able to have consistency throughout our district and put our students as the top priority for safety and that peace of mind that this could provide to a parent. All it takes is for one family to not have their kid at the stop for it to become an issue in the community. So I think this is brilliant and appreciate those who have looked into this. And also I appreciate the clarification that, the conspiracies out there that this is radio frequency for ulterior motives is something that we're really not interested in this district. This is about safety and security of our students. So I see there's one more request to share information, and then I will call for a vote. Board Member Warner.
Thank you, President Zanowski. So I love the idea and I love the concept, and I will respect the people that have been very concerned about the tracking of this. I don't know much about radio frequencies and microwaves and all that. I trust that we live in a pretty safe world. This is going to pass and move forward, but I will respect the people that have reached out that are very concerned about the tracking part of the RFIDs.
All right, with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the use of TIPS contract for the purchase of a card ID system district-wide. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hart-Wells. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
That motion passes 3-2. And moving on to item R, approve the renewal of varsity tutors for fiscal year 2023-24. Board Member Warner.
Thank you, President Zanowski. So varsity tutors was brought in a few years back to obviously help with tutoring and to decrease the learning loss gap through our pandemic. And while it has served some of its purpose, one of the bigger things that is going to help our students is in-person tutoring. And Dr. Menzel and I've had many conversations about varsity tutors. It's on Zoom. The RFP went out for just online, and which again, it serves a purpose. But we do have to move forward to having a in-person vendor that's local so that our students can get that one-on-one, one-on-two, face-to-face learning. I know that my students, my kids, when they were struggling in a subject or there was a gap in something, I would either pay their teacher or there would be a teacher available that would help them. And I think it's absolutely the best way for our students to get caught up. And I understand it can't always be a teacher, but it could be somebody that as a college student or an expert in a subject. So I actually just wanted to make a motion to approve this with the addition that we add a vendor that is local and will provide in-person tutoring for the multiple needs that we need in our district.
That would be Sorry, that would be something you can put forward for a future agenda item, but right now, the issue at hand is as it's written here.
Actually, I am able to make a modification. We've done that in the past.
Okay, let's hear from the rest of the board members first.
Yep.
Ms. McLennan, logistics of motion, please.
Madam President, members of the governing board, the item pertaining to the hiring of an in-person one-on-one tutor is not on your agenda for this evening, so it would need to be put forward as a future agenda item. You can certainly direct the administration to bring that back to the board, but it's not on your agenda item. In addition, you probably would need to go through an alternative procurement for that individual.
You still have the mic, nope, okay. Ms. Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. I've just got a few questions that I don't believe that have been answered. Do we know how much we've spent on varsity tutors since we began in 2020?
We do, Madam President and Board Member Carney. Thank you for your question. I have appreciated the questions posed right at the start of this meeting about during the budget conversation, what are we doing to prioritize kids and learning, and those that have been posed specific to the tutoring services that we're providing. So as you know, as this was initiated, the world looked a little bit different, and to Board Member Werner's point, the need for remote connections for tutoring was greater at that time. And so during that time, we had lesser dollars. The connections with our teachers was present too. So using our ESSER dollars, the 20% that needs to be set aside, for ESSER 3 right now to respond to that learning loss, we have two kinds of tutoring happening, those with our teachers, one-on-one tutoring, and that which we have secured through varsity tutors. So over the course of time, in the first year, 2021, we just spent $6,000 on that outreach for individual one-to-one tutoring. There was no small group tutoring that was happening. It was just one-to-one. Last year, we spent $62,890 for varsity tutors. This year, we spent total $144,000, and part of that was because we know for high dosage tutoring, the kind that's really going to make an impact, it needs to be sustained over time. It needs to be with certified teachers. The high dosage tutoring usually means 30 to 50 minutes, 3 times a week. So we introduced 2 different models to use varsity tutors during the day at a handful of our campuses with small groups. So great questions. And this last year, again, it was $144,000, and our teachers, one-to-one, $38,596. At $30 an hour, that's about 1,200 hours that our teachers gave to students one-to-one this year too.
Great, and then how do we know that varsity tutors is working?
Also a great question. We've asked that question too. Previous years, it wouldn't have been the way that we were using them. It wasn't consistent with the one-to-one tutoring. Any kiddo could reach out, so there was no way to measure if that was an effective use of time in terms of learning gain. This year, we've requested pre and post tests from varsity tutors, and Dr. Bachman and I talked about that today, about the importance and need for our own metrics and measures, not just using a vendor's pre and post. So didn't have a lot of valid data on that, with the exception of that which we collected from our students, McKinney-Vento students. Our student services team has highlighted that those that of our students we were able to connect through varsity tutors that had consistent attendance, the gains were over 30%, again, using the vendors pre-post. So that's something that we want to monitor too. So that metric is important, and that's one of the reasons that we feel strongly about moving forward with some of the services from varsity tutors also. I think it's important to recognize too, initially, most of the vendors through ESSER proposed paid contracts, and then if you didn't use your services, you could push them into the next year. So for a 5-year contract, we've been doing that, and we this spring disrupted that and said, actually, we'd like to just pay for that which we have used moving forward and not have a preset amount. And we're working with the company. They're actually coming in the next couple weeks pending this vote to talk through specifications and expectations moving forward, so we can better monitor the success of this. Because moving forward, part of Hanover's previous presentations shared that they do program evaluations. Something like this, having extra support so we can justify whether or not we want to move it as ESSER sunset is going to be really, really important. We need to have the evidence and data to show that it's effective. So I've appreciated the questions a whole lot on this. Thank you.
Do we know how many students took advantage of this tutoring this past school year?
We do. Individually pursuing it just one-to-one, not very many. 29 plus 46, somebody could do that math. So that's our least frequented people just reaching out to connect for help, independently signing up. I think part of that is when we first started this, it was we wanted students that were quarantined to be able to use varsity so they weren't missing as much instruction. And I think it's been harder to shift that lens to say this could be for any kiddo that wants or needs support. So disrupting that communication and how it was first introduced, I think is part of the reason that we don't have a lot of individual connections that way. But we have 3 or 4 different targeted interventions, small groups. So we had the better part of 43 students identified at Ingleside, 18 students identified at Tonalina Middle School, and these were extensive. This is more of the high dosage tutoring, receiving up to 210 hours as small groups. 100 students using it at Saguaro for 240 hours, small groups again. So those are the kind of higher dosage tutoring that's known to be impactful, not the one-stop. I didn't really understand what happened in my math class today. Even though that's important, this other kind of tutoring, far more effective in terms of really improving student learning. Did I get them all? I think I did.
And then were you able to talk with those site principals that we're using? You know, like you mentioned Ingleside and Saguaro and other schools. Were you able to talk with them about how it was working and they say they want this?
And our Alice, who's enjoying one of her kiddos is getting married during this time frame. She's not with us today, and she would be a shining star here. She has contact with our principals to develop these programs and opportunities for kids. So her reporting back has been that we have got to offer these things during the school day. And that's actually one of the high dosage tutoring recommendations too, is if it's going to be effective, embedded in the day, either a lunch bunch or an intervention time. MTSS teams have been having conversations about what this looks like too. They're actually one of the persons that have requested that we continue with it too. At the secondary level, it's harder to find a targeted intervention during the school day. So feedback from principals was it was difficult to secure attendance consistently if we didn't embed it into the day. And that was from our middle school campuses. That was important learning.
Okay, and my last question is, how many unused hours do we have that we're going to be rolling over?
Great question. So it varied by program. So 55, 31, 10. Again, 55, 31, and 10. I'm seeing from the original. And 96 is the last one? Oh, thank you. Plus 42, that's the last Saguaro one. 138 total hours that rolls over.
So we wouldn't be spending necessarily as much.
Correct, and we talked about this too, because we believe in being able to justify expenses for this moving forward. So we put an up to, not to exceed 150. I think that's what the agenda item says. And if things are going well and we could show evidence of that, we could bring it back to the governing board and ask for an extension for that. But we need to be able to show evidence and justify future uses for this too. Again, it's what ESSER is intended for, this 20%, so we believe it's a good use of those dollars.
Okay, thank you. That's my hesitation, is we just haven't received
Agreed.
the data that it's working to approve it again. So thank you for all that.
Dr. Hartwells.
I honestly, I thought that was a great stream of questions, and I don't have any, but you hit on all of my questions too. Thank you. Actually, I will just agree with Board Member Warner that bringing back a in-person tutoring component, I think would add a lot of value. Thanks.
And I don't think that has ever gone away, the in-person. I think that, and I used to agree with Board Member Warner on the fact that there's nothing that replaces the in-person interaction, the ability to ask and answer questions immediately when you need help. And so it became apparent to me, this other niche population that something like Varsity Tutors supports, and that's a 24/7 access. So if a student is up late studying, and they have no other way of getting support, this is an opportunity for them to do it around the clock. So, you know, I think you, and thank you for bringing up the McKinney-Vento support too for our students under that regulatory measure. I think that is something that is key. We need to have something that's flexible. It can't always be someone that is connected to a campus, although that is ideal. And I also am very aware that sometimes our teachers are volunteering these tutor opportunities to their students before school, during lunch, after school, and not being compensated. So they are not actually being rolled into this, some of this data that we're talking about. I do think it's great for us to be looking at our intervention opportunities for our kids differently. I love the small group ideas on campuses. I hadn't thought about that. That's great. So I think it's really important for us in any type of service that we're investing in is to realize we're getting our best return on our investment. So, and not paying a flat fee for whatever that looks like. So the hours used, great. Let's use it forward and be creative with how we're using that. Board Member Werner.
Thank you. So I just wanted to recognize that I think it's really excellent that there were that many teachers that were able to take advantage of this and also to earn extra income, and look forward to putting something forward in the future to continue to support our students.
All right, seeing that there are no other requests to speak at this time, I'd like to approve the renewal of Varsity Tutors for fiscal year 2023-24. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor to approve this renewal, say aye. Aye. That motion passes 5-0. And I believe that is it for our consent agenda. We are, yep, so we've already approved it as amended, and we've approved each individual one, so now we move on to our action items. Okay. Moving on to action item 11A, approval of governing board maintenance and operation override pro statement. We are not going to have presentations, only Q&A. Is Shannon going to be answering any Q&A for this topic?
She can. You can stay at your seat too, and
Okay.
and I'm happy to
Okay.
answer as well.
Governing board members, do any of you have any questions on this particular action item? I see Board Member Carney's got her request on. Nope, okay. Seeing that there are no questions on this, I'd like to make a motion to approve the governing board maintenance and operation override pro statement. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Moving on to 11B, approval of the renewal of Hanover Research for fiscal year 2023-24 fiscal year. For that twice. Any questions on this particular item? Board Member Werner.
So Dr. Menzel and I had a conversation about this in one of our meetings, and he shared with me that there was a downturn in users who are submitting surveys on Hanover. We also discussed that using EDGE, which is part of K-12 Insights, which was approved at our last board meeting, could actually take the place of this, and we would have some control over what our questions are. And they also have they have the ability to have a unique code so that we are 100% certain that it's just one person, one family that is submitting that particular survey. And so I'm not sure why we're going to spend another $57,000 on top of the $70,000 that we approved at the last meeting to use a similar service to obtain surveys for our, for information from our students and staff.
Thank you for those questions. Dr. Menzel, can you weigh in on this question. Are we able to transfer any of the data that we acquired through Hanover for any future survey comparisons?
So we have the survey results from our prior surveys, and we would have that. I don't know that we downloaded any files electronically, but I believe we could do so if we didn't renew a membership. But what we wouldn't have is access to their research library of over 1,300 different studies that help inform professional practice. So I think there are, in my mind, two separate questions. One is a question around whether or not Hanover is the right organization to continue the climate survey. Are we asking the right questions, and is the process that's utilized the right one? So we know that there are alternatives that can be explored. The second thing is that Hanover does a whole lot more than that, and I would like to ask Dr. Benson to talk about the ways in which Hanover has provided some support, and then I would like to bookend her comments by referencing the fourth recommendation from our Cognia accreditation that I think also bolsters the idea that Hanover still provides value added to our district.
Dr. Benson.
Thank you, Board Member Sanowski and governing board members and Dr. Menzel. I think part of my learning in coming back to SUSD was recognizing and understanding the role that Hanover has played in shaping research projects and what services they had provided in previous years. You heard and referenced to the Special Ed Task Force earlier this evening, and they were significant in providing focus groups, facilitating focus groups for those purposes, and also in learning the perceptions of special ed programming through stakeholder surveys. So there were key pieces of that they were supporting the work that led to the outcomes and packet that's been linked in Cognia and otherwise, talking about action steps recommended for our special ed through our Special Ed Task Force. We've also engaged them this year in best practices in learning about math program implementation and best practices in math intervention. We've worked with them this year on learning more about most recent research on effective grading practices. As you've indicated before, we've continued with the climate survey, but that's just one chunk of this. But we have access to on-demand research for any topic that we might need to explore or be examining, and we can expand that further to our site leaders. That's something we need to do a better job of, I think, moving forward. And that was on my watch, that there was a lot of change at cabinet level and didn't extend the portal access far enough. So moving forward, would definitely want to pursue that. Most, I think, important to this conversation is what they might be able to help us with next. I do think program evaluations are clutch as ESSER sunsets, and the new budget approved by the governor doesn't have results-based funding continuing. So being able to share with our board and our stakeholder groups what's really working and how we know it's working, and having support in that. Program evaluation is robust work. It's not for the faint of heart. It's thoughtful and deep in order for us to be able to justify and make claims about what's making the biggest impact of those programs that we would identify we would want to have explored. They also have a robust MTSS platform that we could tap into. We've got some pretty good resources, and our MTSS A and B team that would be an option for them and not something we'd have to pursue, but the company does have that. The vendor does have that support too.
Dr. Benson, this being your area of specialty, do you think that what this program offers, this research opportunity provides us with a great return on that investment that we're being asked to support tonight?
I think to Dr. Menzel's point about it being two separate things, that's important here too. The survey part, access to our longitudinal data, the methodologies that they have, the analytics that they run. I think part of our responsibility, if we were to continue this, is finding out ways to better connect with our stakeholder groups and get more participation. I think legislation that made surveys opt-in impacted this conversation too. That's new, and I think that happened since we first started using Hanover. So to your point, I believe all of us around the table believes hearing from our stakeholder groups is very important. So we definitely need to have a survey, the longitudinal data that we get from Hanover, and quite honestly, the responsiveness is significant when reaching out to the company. happy that it's not on the table that we try to do this kind of thing on our own, because it's robust to have the methodology and analytics in place to talk through, as you heard from Hanover this evening. So we definitely want to prioritize hearing from our stakeholder groups. So a survey is important to us, and we know we're going to need supports in areas that we've identified moving forward. So that I can speak to. I'm not big about endorsing a vendor. It's just those are the needs that we've identified.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, thank you. Yeah, Dr. Menzel.
So I just wanted to build on the final point that Dr. Benson made. In our Cogni accreditation recommendations, the final recommendation is develop and implement a documented process for evaluating resources, programs, and organization conditions using measurable and timely qualitative and quantitative data. So with Hanover, what we get is one research queue at a time. The climate survey has been one of those. And again, it doesn't have to be Hanover for that. We've got some flexibility there. But to Dr. Benson's point, with the resources that we have, we need to be able to answer the question, is it producing the results that we're expecting? Are our students learning? Are they growing at a rate that we expect? Is this a good return on the investment? That's what Hanover can provide. And at $57,000 versus what it would cost to have another person dedicated to doing program evaluation, when they have a team of people doing it, it's a fraction of what you would spend to build out that same capacity within our own organization. So I think that's the other reason to consider approving the contract, because Dr. Benson and her team can put together a purposeful queue of research that helps answer those questions. So when we bring back recommendations for what should be continued or what should be discontinued, at some point we have to stop doing some things so that we're investing in the things that produce the best result for our students. Having this data is what will help us make informed decisions.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. My question is actually for Ms. Crozier. I'm seeing this as indirect funds, or indirect costs is where the proposal from the, to fund. Has that always been the case with the Hanover survey?
Yes, it has. It's something that things that tend to come around later on in the year, that is generally where we'll go to instead of M&O. That's where it's been paid. And this came about several years ago, but kind of midway into the year. So that's where we had been paying for it from.
Okay, so this is not out of capital or M&O?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing that there are no other questions, I would like to make a motion to approve the renewal of Hanover Research for fiscal year 2023-2024. Is there a second to that? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor to approve the renewal of Hanover Research for fiscal year 2023-2024, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion passes 3-2. Moving on to 11C, the second read and approval of AP European History. Any questions on that topic? Seeing that there are none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the AP European History motion here. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And then moving on to the annual approval of the 2023-24 Student Code of Conduct. Are there questions on this? I actually have a comment to make on this. I really appreciate the addition of that district-wide adherence to the community support of a way for the day initiative in regards to personal telecommunication devices. I think that this will help instruction and it will help our community in many ways. I've heard requests from some parents at times asking what we're doing to eliminate the distractions from learning. So I think that is a good thing that we're going to be doing. I do have a question. How are we going to communicate this new expectation district-wide if it passes? Dr. Sakos.
I need to figure out how to turn on my mic.
It's on.
Okay. We are actually already working with communications on a campaign that would begin, should this be approved, as early as next month. so that it can be reinforced by our school campuses with their back-to-school information and their back-to-school activities.
Thank you, Dr. Sackos. And I'll read the part from the student, or the code of conduct that specifically addresses it. It says, electronic and telecommunication devices are to be away for the day for students in grades pre-K through 8. Students in grades 9 through 12 may only use electronic devices with the permission of the teacher for instructional purposes only. So just for the community, for them to be aware of, this is what we are, if this passes, what we're planning on doing and how they can support this initiative as well. Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Okay, I've got a few minor questions on this, starting with, who am I addressing the questions to? Okay, Dr. Sackos.
Yes, and Ms. Cron, who led the Code of Conduct Committee, so if I
Okay,
can answer,
perfect.
she can.
Okay, well, I'm sure you got this. I just have, let's see, I thought there would be a presentation on this, but there's a couple things I wanted to start with. At the beginning, we have an addition for the annual permission for firearm education materials for school year 2023-24. Is that whole thing going to be a separate section in the Code of Conduct? I can't tell by what we received if that, all of that verbiage is going to be listed, or how is that going to appear?
Yes, so we will take the language that was refined, that we sent out for this year, and put it in there verbatim as it was. And that is something that has to be an opt-in and not a passive consent.
Okay, so where it's highlighted, you're going to insert in all that verbiage that we see.
Yes, and we're happy to share that permission slip that we used this past year with the governing board as well.
Okay, thank you. Then I have just something I noticed under IDs, which I think is way down. Let me get there. Looks like page 61. I think I saw a discrepancy where in the Code of Conduct, it says all students second grade and up will need to wear IDs. Yet when I talked with Mr. Friedman, he said that the new IDs will be kindergarten through 12th. Yet the Code of Conduct says second grade through 12th. So I'm just trying to confirm.
Yes, thank you for catching that, and that is something that Ms. Cron and I will talk to Margaret Cerna about. Historically, our K-1 students would only wear their IDs to lunch. So they would come in the classroom, they'd hang it up in their cubby. So we just need to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of the time in which they're wearing their IDs and be more explicit in the Code of Conduct.
Okay, so.
Because they would take them off during playtime, for instance, even though they're the breakaway. Oftentimes our K-1s would take them off for recess, during the class, so they're not doing like what I'm doing right now, a little distraction, swinging them.
Okay.
But we will definitely take a look at that and make sure that we are consistent in our messaging and in the application of the code.
Okay, perfect. That's what I think. Yep. I just wanted to point out the consistency. And then my last question, or not question, but comment under Appendix A, which is under the influence. Can someone help me what page number that is? 71. Thank you. Oh.
And then my printout copy says 71.
Oh, that's nice. I don't have that. Sorry, I have to get to it. We are adding language to Thank you. 73 for us. There it is. Perfect. Thank you very much. Sorry for that delay. We are adding language under the influence. So it says, currently it says, for the purposes of this policy, a student is under the influence if he or she exhibits one or more commonly accepted signs of intoxication. Then we're adding a line that says students suspected of being under a controlled substance will be assessed by the school nurse, and abnormalities will be reported to administration. But there's no, there's nothing about parents and when parents will be called into this. And I think it's important because we have had issues that when will the parents be contacted? And I would like for us to consider that and consider adding the parents into this language because, so we don't have issues and everyone understands when parents will get involved.
Absolutely, and the expectation is that very day, when the student is seen by the school nurse. Oftentimes, there may be a suspicion, you know, they check out okay, they were just really tired of late night studying, sleeping in class, maybe presenting in a certain way, and then the nurse will report that to administration, and then administration would make that call. But if there's something that an RN needs to clearly articulate to a parent regarding concerns on vitals, then the expectation is the nurse would be making that contact to the parent so they can, you know, talk through, you know, with their nursing language. But we will certainly take a look at that and provide some clarity.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Sakos, I would like for there to be a consideration of some sense of time expectation for the communication home, that it's not sometime during the school day, that it's as close to the event happening as possible. That was a concern that we have faced, and I agree it's an area we can improve upon. Also, comment on the IDs. It says, I believe, that all students will have them, so that all of them would have them, but, you know, sensibility would determine how they wear them and when they wear them, according to the grade level teacher or the activity that a student's participating in. So they would all have them according to our code of conduct. Any other questions or comments on the approving our annual code of conduct? Seeing that there are none, I would like to make a motion to approve our annual code of conduct for the 2023-2024 school year. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nope. Okay, everyone said aye. Thank you. All are in favor of that motion. That motion passes 5-0. Future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items that would like to be proposed at this time by board members? Board Member Werner?
So I'd like to propose a discussion and action on an in-person or local tutoring that could service all of our students and the different needs, from a typical student to McKinney to special ed to speech pathology, but all encompassing, that would be in person as needed. That's one. I have a couple. The other, I'd like to propose a discussion on having a behavioral school campus on one of our campuses, and we can discuss that. And third, I'd like to have a list of people that have been on administrative leave or admin on assignment who are getting paid who are not working.
Did you get all those? Can you say that last one?
The last one is a list of people and the reasons why people are on administrative leave or admin on assignment, so they're getting paid, but they are not working.
Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you, Board President Sinowski. I would request a review of policy IKC for recalibration to align with the Latin system. IKC. C is in carbon. Yes. So in alignment with the to-be Latin system rather than GPA for class rank, getting rid of class rank rather. As well, policy IKF, as in fluorine, a revisit of the graduation requirements with a proposal from the administration that calibrates to future-focused learning and preparedness. Thank you.
Board Member Carney?
Thank you, President Sinowski. I have two item requests for our next meeting, August 8th. My first request is for Dr. Menzel to look into policy violation by Board President Julie Sanowski, who has violated policy BDB, which says board president is to allow full and complete exploration of each item of business, yet she has silenced me from speaking from the dais at least 2 times. Second, I would like a discussion presentation at the next meeting on the work of the website approval committee that has been meeting weekly to approve supplemental materials for use in our classrooms. Thank you.
Any others? Okay, at this time, I note that our next meeting is Tuesday, August 8th at 6 p.m., and that will be a regular governing board meeting here at Coronado High School. And then Tuesday, August 29th, special governing board meeting at the MDA, and that would be at 6 p.m. also. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this governing board meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. It is 8:24 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.